And we are live.
How many viewers
So
do you typically wait for
yeah, we
before you
have no
start?
views right now, no viewers right now. But unannounced live stream. Oh well, I see three joining the chat. So yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanna welcome our guest today. Is a hybrid. He has a YouTube channel, and he's a developer. So if you can introduce yourself, you want to say like what is that you've been? What is your experience developing games? If you can, you know, just in general, so people know who are we gonna be talking to.
Yeah. Do you typically uh get into the introductions like immediately, or do you typically like sit
We
there
are
for a
live
few
right now.
minutes?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
just
know.
so
I was
people
saying, do
know
you
who you
typically wait
are.
for more people, or do you just
No,
go
because
instantly?
this is gonna be, later on people are gonna see it.
Oh yeah, they
You
can
know,
rewatch it, or
rewatch it. I
yeah,
will I will leave this live stream on the channel so people can watch it later.
that's good. That's good. Well, then I'll get into it. So I'm hybrid. I'm a modder, indie dev, and AAA dev. So I started off my programming career basically on Skyrim back in 2011. It was like the first game I ever started, tweaking with the creation engine and making mods and stuff. And I really loved it. I was making a ton of stuff. Some of it I uploaded, some of it was personal. And that led me into, basically getting into actual game development and learning how to use Unreal and also a little bit of Unity too. And I've worked on a couple of games. Hold on. I'm gonna go to my Reddit profile, so I have some sources there and stuff. Do you know if I send any links in chat, if it'll be like
Yeah, you can no,
removed?
you can send any links. We can post any links you want.
All right, good. So sorry, the baby's being loud in the background.
That's okay. So were you just having fun making mods for Skyrim, or were you studying at that point you were studying at school, or just started studying independently to
I
figure that
was
out?
I was younger when I started making Skyrim mods. Not like super young, but I wasn't like 18 yet, to say the least. So I wasn't like in college studying, but I was definitely watching like a guides from a bunch of YouTubers on like how to use the creation kit and the mod tools, and I was figuring things out on myself. The Skyrim mod kit and the Skyrim as a game was very buggy, but I actually like that because honestly, fixing these stupid bugs and troubleshooting them has taught me so much. So I thank Bethesda for, having really buggy games because it required me to use my brain, and it's definitely helped me progress as a developer and made, you know, actually learning this stuff a lot easier later in life. So,
So to mod a Skyrim, you didn't have to program. You didn't have to know how to program yet.
well, if you want to use advanced mods that have to work outside the game, like a mod that uses Skyrim script extender, which is like a modding API for Skyrim to do more advanced stuff, you do have to learn how to program typically, and how to write your own DLL files and stuff like that. So it
Mhm.
is something that I had to learn later, but the simple stuff is just getting used with the interface of the engine and working around, Bethesda issues.
That sounds cool. I mean, when I was studying my career, I graduated from engineering in telecommunications and electronics. We did some programming, like very basic stuff. And actually, I think that was one of my favorite things during my career because I was actually focused on the music only. The career was just like 10% of my brain. I was like 100% music. I mean, the rest was music. And the reason why I didn't decide to go with programming is because mainly because I was living in Cuba. I knew that's not going anywhere, at least here. But of course, I was hoping to
Yeah.
come here to the US. And yeah, I would actually love to learn at some point. I might still do it because I have some friends that they do know how to program. And it's just making a phone call and say, hey, just tell me what do I have to study. And you start sending me books and you read this and that. And yeah, I might still do it at some point. I don't know. But it sounds like a very exciting thing to do, but you know better. You can maybe share some of your insights about that. But of course, we wanna wanna talk about today, TAA, DLSS, frame generation. Are the games today blurry? And I actually like a lot the video you made about it. That's why we are here. You made it. That video blow up. It has like a 100,000 views at this
Almost two
point,
hundred
right?
thousand. It's
Almost
like
200,000 views.
192,000 last I checked. That was
That is crazy, man. None of my videos even. I mean, I have like a video has like 80,000 views. I think something like that. That is insane. 200,000 views. I mean, that video, because you know why I think that video is so successful, because you are not like just right away saying, okay, it sucks or it's bad. You're being reasonable, and you're
Mhm.
coming from a perspective that we don't see often. So you have some expertise on the matter. You're not like me. I just open the game. Oh, it looks blurry. It sucks. You're not like that. You have some expertise, so you know what you're talking about, and people can see that. And also, you show very nice side by side pictures. Which, by the way, how did you take those pictures when you move the camera? Were you just using an analog stick and then you print screen? How did you take those pictures in motion to show the side by side?
Well, what you do, and I've heard this from other people in the community that also do this, is like you can use thumbsticks, I guess, but I use a keyboard and I just press A and D repeatedly, and then I just spam the print screen button. Then I take one stationary, and then I look through all the screenshots that I took while I was in motion, and I pick the one that's identical to the one where I was stationary. So you get a motion and stationary screenshot that's the same.
No, but my thing is, how do you know? Because I mean, if you are like, if you have a camera, for example, if there
Mhm.
is an object moving on the screen, you can follow that with the camera. And maybe if you're moving your analog and you follow a little bit, you might be able to see. But I wonder if you take a screenshot, if that's exactly how it looks when you move. I'm not sure. That's why I asked, because it was interesting to me how you did that side by side comparison. I mean, does that work? If you're just moving the camera, you take a screenshot. Is that the way how it looks in motion?
Uh, yeah, beside obviously excluding persistence blur, but for TA blur, then yeah, that's how
Yeah,
it
of course,
works.
of course. That would not include persistence blur at all. Yeah. What's up, everybody? We have Astria and Isham. How's it going? So yeah, man, that was very eye opening. Actually, Red Dead Redemption, you showed there, it was looking blurrier in motion. If I remember correctly, with DLSS, and we can get into that. What I don't like about Red Dead with DLSS is that it looks sharper when you move. It's because it is using sharpening or something. So it is kind of blurry when it's a static, and then when you move the camera, it becomes sharper, which is very weird. And other games do the opposite. So I'm not sure if there's like a reason for that. But
Are you
yeah, the
talking
main
about
thing. Oh, go ahead.
Red Dead 2? Are you talking about
Yeah,
Red Dead Redemption 2?
yeah,
Oh, yeah, they do have a sharpening filter, but even if it's getting sharper, you should notice that details being removed at the same time, even if it looks sharper. Like if you look
yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
foliage,
Yes, because it's just sharpening, like just
yeah.
edge enhancement stuff. But yeah, man, this is the reason why this blows my mind, because if you get blurry games, but it's just like an indie developer or something, okay, you might think, well, that's something that's difficult to get right. And maybe you can share some insights about how difficult it is to get a clear picture, like a good TAA implementation, or maybe something even completely different, or a mixture between TAA and other techniques. But the problem I see is that we're talking about the best games, the biggest studios where the most of the talent is. We're talking about Rockstar. I'm not sure what's your opinion on these Naughty Dog games, but for me they look very blurry too. So I see I am usually seeing some masterpieces, like the best games we have, completely ruined because they look blurry. And that's what I cannot understand. How can they get that wrong when they focus so much on small details and other things that they get right? So they are fantastic games, but how can they get wrong? Like the most, I think that's the most important thing, because if your game looks spectacular, but then it just looks blurry like a Vaseline all over the screen, it's like, wow, it's like such a big disappointment.
Well, before I get into
Go
the
ahead, go ahead.
reasons why games are blurry or how necessary TAA is or how to make it look better or how hard it is and all that stuff, I do want to say that there are a lot of people that will use these reasons to try to invalidate your own preference or opinion. And I just want to say that, you can offer whatever technical explanation you want for a problem that someone has, but it doesn't make that problem go away, right? Like, let's say
Mhm.
you get motion sickness from playing at low frame rates in VR or something. That's a very common thing. VR can easily cause motion sickness for people. If you offer a techno explanation as to why they're experiencing motion sickness or how hard games are to run, it's like, well, this device has to be cheap. It also has to be lightweight since it's attached to your face, so it can't have powerful hardware in it. And then it also has to run into the game twice through both eyes. So it's pretty difficult to get a good frame rate, and here's why you experience motion sickness. That explanation won't suddenly make that person stop feeling motion sickness, right? So someone can explain TA to you, and it's not going to make you love it suddenly, right? So, if anyone's watching this, that's a bit of a dissenter. I'm not sure why anyone would be, because it's just all opinions. Doesn't mean much. But yeah, it's not going to change people's perspective, and there's really nothing you can do to make someone see your perspective if they disagree, because these things are so subjective and they're down to a few factors. They're down to one, your own setup, and two, your own biology, which the second one you can't control. The first one you kind of can, I guess.
Yeah, no, and I mean it is. Of course, it is understandable that compromises they need to be made, because it is very difficult to get everything perfect. And of course, I can only imagine if we can get 16K resolution, thousands of frames per second, like just pure pixels. That's gonna look fantastic, but we cannot get that. And of course, maybe using techniques like TAA, DLSS, frame generation, asynchronous reprojection, whatever it is, you can achieve like 90% or 80%, and then the hardware required is not as high. So then, of course, you're gonna do that. That's I understand that, but one thing is that you see other games where it looks good. Like, I mean, I see, for example, Ratchet and Clank. For me, I open it on the PC. I'm like, man, this game looks nice, and it's just TAA, DLSS, the same thing. But then I open, these Naughty Dog games or Red Dead Redemption. It's like, this absolutely sucks. So why, in my opinion, it just looks very, very bad. So that's what I don't understand. How can they get wrong just the clarity of the game? Why is it so difficult? We're not talking about indie developers here. This is like the best of the best. How can they get that wrong? Because, for example, I know, well, I don't know, but I guess that HDR shouldn't be that difficult to get right, because I mean there are so many mods and so many things you can do to get a good HDR. So then I cannot understand how a big AAA studio gets HDR wrong. If there are so many ways to get it right, and it is like, why why do we see black level rays and those issues? I just don't understand that. But when it comes to TAA and those stuff, I just don't know how difficult it is, and why is that they are getting it wrong, or maybe it is the way I see it. Do you see these Naughty Dog games being blurry, or are they fine for you?
Well, I don't play Naughty Dog games, so I don't know if they're blurry, but I can get into why HDR is always messed up and then general issues of TA. So the reason why HDR is messed up is because gaming is very compartmentalized, and how you intend for, a game to look, and then you hand that off to like a different part of the studio that would handle HDR, and then it gets back to the people that were working on it originally, and then they add a bunch of like post processing effects and their own color grading, and then that messes up whatever HDR effect that the people put on the screen before. So that can be one reason, is the compartmentalization and just handing things off back and forth. It can also be the fact that, some developers are hamstrung by their leadership and their lack of knowledge on what to prioritize on a technical level, or it's the things are doable but are either cost or scope prohibitive with the given project, and are then deprioritized for something more profitable. Because although HDR would make your game a lot better, how many people aren't buying your game because it doesn't have good HDR, right? There's definitely some, but probably not enough to make a dent in your profits. And that's just
Yeah.
the sad thing about gaming is, it's very, very profitable, and that's what they're in it for. So
Yeah,
those
with
are
the
the
case
two
of
reasons.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What I was gonna say with the case of HDR, what I believe is happening because I see the pattern every time I see a game trying to have a color filter. That's where you get that black level raise up. That's what I'm
Exactly.
seeing. Like I see a green color filter, you bet. See, I get your black level raise and the contrast destroyed. And then you see it sometimes, like for example, in Alan Wake, I saw that beginning and I was like, this is terrible. And then I didn't even play the game. And then gaming takes like, no, later on it just looks good. The black level floor is fine. So then why is that beginning messed up? It's not messed up. They decided to just have a green filter and that just raises the black. I would not raise the black to have a green filter. And I think even if you add a filter, you can still get the perfect blacks all the time, especially on the darkness. That beginning of Alan Wake is on a on a forest at night. You have no perfect blacks. That's like a very bad idea to me.
That is a pretty bad idea, especially for OLED users. Obviously, LCD users, they don't even know what black looks like. I'm just kidding. They
Well,
they know what black looks like, but not on their display. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, that's definitely could be a case of the the different departments, not communicating well. But it could also just be a case of that's their artistic intention, because you have to understand, just because they're game developers, and this is true for like TAA, it doesn't make them an expert on everything, right? So just because you know how to make a game doesn't make you an anti-aliasing expert, doesn't make you an HDR expert. So, I mean, most of these people that I know don't even use HDR. I've never used it. So making a correct HDR implementation isn't exactly super easy for them.
but but the thing is, like, I am not an expert. Like I just
Mhm.
started. I have a HDR capable display less than 2 years ago. And just by enjoying my display and trying to tweak the settings, and of course having this YouTube channel and people telling me what to do and where to look for, I feel like I can immediately, like I can open any game immediately. I know if it's good or bad or messed up or what's the problem. So I don't understand. Like if I could get a job on a studio just to check
Yeah.
if it looks good, I guess. And I'm not an expert. So how can just work there? And you have to know better than me. I'm sorry. I'm not an expert. So that's what I don't understand. How can and also they don't fix it either. Like how can Red Dead Redemption, for example, Rockstar? I mean, we're talking about unlimited resources and talent. Okay, because for me, Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the best games ever created. So how can that game have HDR? There's something weird with it. Okay, you might have your opinion, you might like it or not, but there's something weird with it. But a lot of people ask me about Red Dead Redemption HDR on the comments. So that's clearly something that doesn't looks off about it. And have also the blurry TA. How one of the best games ever is ruined with suspicious HDR and a blurry picture. That's what just blows my mind. Do you think there's no one in Rockstar that realizes that and why that cannot be fixed? Um, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, first, when did Red Dead Redemption 2 come out again? What year was that?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I think it was
Because I was about to
2008.
say HDR back then wasn't as mainstream and
Yeah, that's
popular
true.
as it is today, but for why they I mean, because 'cause you're not, you're just a guy with a display. You don't have, like, any sort of degree in display calibration,
Of
and you can
course.
make a good HDR fix. I guess it's your willingness to learn this stuff and the fact that you actively like it. These people don't know anything about it, and they're not really willing to put in a lot of time to learn. But again, sometimes they actually do put in the time, and it's ruined later down the line when a different department adds the filters to the game or whatever. So even if you did good work on the game, it could be just messed up later, basically by other people.
Wow. Yeah, so I get what you're saying. So maybe you are the HDR, guy, and then the artist decides to put a color filter or something, and then they ruin it, and then you're like, you cannot get it back to fix it or something. That's why you're.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that happening with the segmentation on the industry because when we roll the credits for a game, it's like it never ends. It's like so many people working on that. And yeah, I can see that happening for sure. But there has to be someone who is evaluating the end product. And we are not talking about a bug that happens when you are 30 hours into the game. We're talking about just the way your game looks in general. You just open it and you see HDR and you see if it looks sharp, if it looks clear or not. Someone like quality control has to say, okay, well, we messed that up here. Like just general things. Be- because to detect bugs and other stuff, that has to be a lot more difficult. I guess you you let me know if you know better, but that has to be a lot more difficult to find, and the programming and everything that goes behind making a game. It has to be a lot more difficult than just to notice if it looks blurry or not, and if it has the black level race.
Mm. So I do think that QA should include stuff like testing a game's like accessibility features and how feasible they are, and also their HDR. Right now, it's just like bugs and gameplay. I do think it should include that umbrella of sort of things and quality of life features, because it just doesn't include that currently. So I do agree with you there, because that way we'll get a proper HDR implementation into our games before it's shipped out. And what was the second part of your
Yeah,
question?
the TA, like why do they don't see the clarity of the game as something? For me, that's like the most important thing. Like if a game looks clear, of course you don't want to see shimmering, but to prevent shimmering at all cost, if you just make everything blurry, that looks terrible. And I was watching your video, and you actually have the exact numbers of, okay, TAA, the edge looks like this resolution, and the picture looks like this resolution. Where did you get those numbers? Like, how do you even um, like calculate that? I've never seen that before anywhere. How do you know that, for example, 1080p TAA, that's 540p, kind of without anti-aliasing, generally it looks like 540p, but then the edges look like, I think it was like 4K, I believe, or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but how do you calculate that? Like how do you know that?
Well, it's a bit like a pseudosciency, so I just took a bunch of screenshots at different resolutions, and this does vary from game to game depending on the strength of the TA and how much information it's removing. But based on how much information it's removing, you can compare it to those native images at a lower resolution and see what it looks equivalent to. And then you can also super sample and see what its edge detail is. So a lot of 1080p games, they have the information of a 720p game, but the anti-aliasing quality is that of a 4K game or something in a lot of cases. So that's basically where I got it from. So it's not like a universal thing, but it is universally true that it does lower, the information overall for a better anti-aliasing though. That's, just
And
something.
there is no way around that. Like because if you add sharpness, like fake sharpness, that's not gonna get that information back. Like you were explaining on your video, like there's no way that you can get 4K TAA or DLSS or whatever, and it looks like 4K no anti-aliasing. Because here is the problem I see, and you highlighted that in your video. Like for example, this game, the hair is like is like the pixels. You get less pixels in some areas, some key areas, and then you feel the need of doing like super sampling, like increasing the resolution like crazy, just because that shimmering bothers you so much. Why can't we just get, okay, 4K? Like, don't reduce the resolution of some of the things. I understand they do it because of performance, but how why is it that, I mean, I want to see 4K. Why don't you, can't you just give me like 4K when I turn off the anti-aliasing completely? Please let me do it. I can see 4K, and I am okay with the shimmering that I get with 4K. No problem. Okay, I see an awesome picture, but the problem is that if you turn off anti-aliasing completely in TAA, these games that come with forced TAA, if you use a mod to just remove it, sometimes what you see is like, this cannot be 4K. It's no way. Like, I have 4K resolution. This game looks so pixelated. This is not 4K at all. So why, like, why can't we just get 4K? And why is that happening so often? Like, what is your take on that?
Well, yeah, so some of it does have to do with like the internal resolution of certain effects that are running, like, screen space reflections. Some of it just has to do with the way that things are rendered. So hair, for example, because they know they're going to use TEA and that it's going to be the only option provided, they actually render their hair in a way that looks more realistic. But if you don't have TA on it, it's very like spotty and dotty. But but it's not difficult to change the hair so that it's smoother, so that when you turn off anti-aliasing, it's not like harsh on the eyes.
Yeah.
But obviously that requires making two different hair shaders and um, providing and then switching to a different one when you turn off anti-aliasing. So I guess that's why more developers don't do it for hair specifically, is it's extra work, and they should definitely put that work in. I mean, it's not that difficult.
And you show that on your video, like you show like in another video that was for developers on the solution, like specifically talking about the hair, because it's the same thing that I see. Sometimes it's just that hair that looks so ugly, and that's why I have to push the resolution so hard. Especially the hair is where we need more resolution. Like, how are you gonna not only keep the same resolution, no, you're gonna lower it below. So you just select 4K, the hair is like a lot lower than that. That sounds like a very bad idea. We need more pixels for the hair, not less. But yeah, I get what you're saying. We might need, with TAA, like a different shader, or like a different, like, quality hair. And then when you turn it off to use no TAA, then the game will be more demanding. I would love to see that. I want to see the performance hit and the quality difference. Especially on those things that are really annoying, the hair, the fence, or the vegetation. Um, that's what I would like to see. I would like to see a game today that comes out. I turn off anti-aliasing and it looks like 4K. Yeah, I want to see 4K everything. Oh, it's very demanding. Okay, well, let's use frame generation or something else. I don't know, but I want to at least see it. Maybe have it as an option that, okay, it's very, very demanding. You cannot get like a playable frame rate, but I would like to see it. Or just the reduce the ambition of the game. So sometimes what I see, and this is what bothers me, but everyone has their own bias and their own liking and stuff, and you come from a more reasonable perspective, okay, because you're developing yourself. But what things that bothers me is that what I see from big channels, their opinion sometimes is like, okay, yes, yeah, you want all the pixels, raw pixels, no anti-aliasing. That's not gonna happen. That's impossible, because then you cannot push graphics. And my opinion is, okay, well, don't push graphics then. Please. Just don't push it. I want to see a game that looks very, very clear. And I believe we definitely have the horsepower to see a game that looks very, very clear. Or maybe you cannot have those insane draw distances and maybe you have to create a different game. You have to reduce the scope. But I would love to see a new game coming out that just looks absolutely crystal clear, no ghosting, no shimmering, nothing and it's just 4K and it looks like 4K. That's what I would like to see. Or even better, maybe the opposite. Like if you can lower the pixels of certain elements, maybe they could increase the pixels. Maybe they say, okay, well, this is gonna be 4K, but at native 4K, the hair is still shimmering. Well, let's make the hair even with more pixels. It's gonna be more demanding, but we can get that raw, crystal clear picture quality. I would just like to see it. Maybe I see it one day, or maybe you as a developer, maybe you can create a project, like a small project, and then you see, okay, in this project you can switch back and forth. Okay, this is TAA, this is what we're using today, and then okay, here's what I did. I just increased the pixels everywhere, and you see the performance hit. This is not worth it. Yeah, it looks fantastic, but we cannot play that. I don't know.
Yeah, that well, what I think is, and obviously I covered two of the reasons why um, developers might not improve their HDR, and those two reasons are applied to TAA. So obviously, leadership that is, they lack knowledge and they, and expertise in certain areas because they're obviously, people that are just leading the company more so than the game, I would say. And then there's also leadership that will, want to prioritize lower hanging fruit. Some developers are also hamstrung by the current industry standards they're working with, or they're hamstrung by the game engine they're using. Like, Unreal Engine, for example. Like, sure, there's some like TEA values they expose to you and some other values and stuff that you can adjust, but there's like blacked out parts of the engine and source code. And so mitigating some types of aliasing is like very difficult. Unreal Engine is probably the most difficult engine to work with for that, and so many games come with Unreal Engine. So even though I know it's feasible, it's it's pretty difficult with engines like that. And
So
then,
yeah, I saw that on your video. You were recommending developers to just please, just leave this, some of the options at least to fix the blurriness, leave that unlocked, like in the config file, so you can change some things, maybe help improve things out. Because if it was actually possible, I mean, if you as a developer, you could actually have access to fix everything. Of course, you can just make a mod so everyone can enjoy that, but maybe it would be worth it for us to just learn how to go really really far and learn how to fix everything. So then that's maybe what it takes to get a clear game. You just need to learn how to program. You need to just change everything, and you fix the resolution of this and that. And if that was possible, maybe, I mean, I would be definitely motivated to learn about it. But I get what you're saying. Those things might be locked for some reason. They don't want you to change anything. Or that's like when a game comes with forced motion blur and chromatic aberration, you cannot turn it off. You have to wait for a mod to turn that off, and it's like so crazy that they still want. That's another thing. Why developers insist again and again in having by default film grain, chromatic aberration, motion blur, like those things that most PC gamers they turn off. Why? It just blows my mind.
well, first, going back to the first issue,
Yeah,
I
go ahead,
would
go
say it obviously is a developer problem because there are some things you can do in Unreal Engine, even if it's some areas are blacked out. So just using that as an excuse for no improvement at all isn't an excuse. However, it's also something Epic Games needs to address and improve themselves. But the Epic Games has a ton of issues they actually need to work on and improve because if you don't know, Unreal Engine can be used for movies and stuff too. And this dual like making stuff for movies and rendering, and then also video games like real time graphics and pre rendered graphics is I feel like is really harming the quality of games. Like the performance isn't very acceptable nowadays because you know these features are kind of made for both, and I really hate that. And going to the post processing issue, um honestly, if sometimes it can feel like developers have vastly different preferences than the average consumer does, right? Because who do you know that likes chromatic aberration, and yet it's in so many games by default? Um, honestly don't know. It could be an engine default, and developers don't tweak engine defaults that much, honestly.
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable explanation. It's just default on the engine, and they don't turn it off. They didn't notice that or something.
Yeah, because how your game looks in the project viewer when you're viewing the game can look different than when you actually compile and build the game. Because
Oh,
like
really?
post effect, yeah, because post effects in the renderer, you need to see everything clearly. They tend to be like disabled a lot of the time. So, and then even when you do enable them, because you're like you want to play in the actual game world and test something, the render is like a smaller part of your. Oh, sorry, I got a pop up my computer. So the render is like a small part of your display, and then you have all your tools on the sides and stuff. So even if they are playing in the game, and this can be true for TEA as well, since it's such a smaller part of your display, the PPI is much higher, and you're less likely to notice like TEA blur or like these post effects that are annoying, and you're also not really looking for it. So that's something else to consider, I suppose.
So maybe you think that they do the entire game, and then at the end they actually open it and like, oh, this looks blurry. We didn't notice that. And so then the thing is, why? Let me ask you, for example, if you do you think that if do you think that is too difficult or too much money for Rockstar, for example? Because I would love to see Red Dead Redemption change, or and even Grand Theft Auto, which is the opposite, just shimmering everywhere. And I think they actually improved it for the PS5 for the console, at least based on a Digital Foundry video that I saw. But in GTA 5, even if you use 4K 8 times SMAA or whatever, you still have shimmering everywhere, and it's terrible. Do you think it is too much money or too much to ask, or is it too difficult or even impossible for Rockstar to say, okay, let's just make the game look very clear, very very good. We're just gonna fix that blur or the sharpening issues or the difference between a static and moving picture that looks sharper or blurry or something like that. Is that too much to ask that they just check that and say, oh yeah, let's fix it?
Well, obviously, as like a independent developer, it's actually like some of the fixes are pretty simple. So I would say yes to some of the things. So like making a different hair shader, that wouldn't be too difficult. But obviously, if you're actually an actual game developer, if you make any type of change, even a small one, it has to go through different compartments, QA, all that, then be published, and you have to pay those people. So it is an expenditure, it costs money and it takes more time than if I just did it. Like I know it works, but I don't have to, you know, send it to someone else to check it. So for me,
Yeah,
it would be
because
something I could do in a day,
they
but for them.
because they might be afraid that they might be breaking something. When you make a change, you might be breaking something else.
Yeah, and also just the time it takes and then the money spent. So I guess that is something to consider as a part of the difficulty equation, I
I mean,
suppose.
but they could easily call it a remaster. I mean, we fixed the blurriness. Now there's a new game. I mean, if Red Dead looked like Ratchet and Clank in terms of the TAA or DLSS implementation, I would be so happy. Like, because for me, um, I was impressed. Like, oh my god, Ratchet and Clank looks absolutely tremendous. And it's not because he's insomnia, because Spider-Man Miles Morales, at least at release, I didn't check recently. It had the same issue. Like when you move the picture with DLSS, it was looking blurrier than when it was a static picture, and that is very very bothersome to me. Like if there's a difference between static and you see what I'm saying. Like let's say you have the a static picture, and as soon as you start moving, you see the sharpness of the image changing, either blurrier or getting sharper. That is so distracting to me. It just sometimes I cannot even, like, I have to get rid of that. I cannot even play the game because of that.
Yeah, that's TA's biggest issue is motion issues. And sharpening can sometimes make it better, it can make it worse. It really depends on the sharpening algorithm itself and how aggressive it is. But it's kind of like when it's over sharpened, it's kind of like pixel overshoot on a monitor. It looks very similar to that. or if it's like very soft in motion, it gets blurry in motion, then it's kind of like very slow pixel response times. Like it looks similar to those effects, and those look pretty ugly. And then obviously if you're combining those things together, then that's even worse, right?
So the other thing that was one of the things that was for me more interesting about your video was that you were explaining that you can actually combine some different anti-aliasing techniques, and of course we've seen that on the games. FXAA plus TAA, which is like it was like the ultimate worst you know thing ever. I've seen it like in Assassin's Creed, the London one. I forgot. It was just so blurry. But it was interesting to me to see that you can actually have a different anti-aliasing technique, let's say for the hair, and then the rest of the game will be different, or you can like segmentate and say, okay, this needs more anti-aliasing. It might be a little bit blurrier. You might not notice that problem, but then we need this to be sharper, and then we can use something different. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that, because that was like one of the things that were more interesting to me, that you can actually um, do like more fine tuning. It's not like, oh, you have to use TAA, boom, everything's blurry, or you can use SMA, boom, you get shimmering or something.
Yeah, so that specific technique, ATA, adaptive TEA, is something that NVIDIA pioneered. It's not like something that has source code to it. It's just an idea they presented. Their specific idea required ray tracing, so I guess that's why you're not seeing it. Is because it requires full on ray tracing, which isn't something every game has, so it's not ready to be an industry standard. So basically, it's hard to push for something unless it can be an industry standard. That everyone can just do, and that's a big problem. Is that if you have to fight against these engines or another issue, then getting every developer on board with something, even if it's a good thing or even if it's not that difficult, is very hard. Like look at like frame generation implementations, whether it's DLS or FSR3, and look at how many games mess up the UI for that. AMD and NVIDIA have very clear documentation on how to handle the UI, and yet it gets messed up anyways. And it's their fault. They don't check it, or they don't. I don't know what they're. Well, I do know kind of what they're messing up, but like they mess up simple things. So
Yeah, it's another thing I noticed from your video, that there are like the guidelines for to get all these things right. The guidelines are there. Like if the
mhm.
developers, they read everything, or they do everything like as with the best practices, basically it is gonna be very good. Like in basically Nvidia, AMD, or all these companies, all these technologies, they know how to fix these issues. They are aware, but maybe you're saying that it just gets overlooked, or they don't pay attention to that too much, because maybe that's not the thing that's gonna sell the most. Because no, I mean, almost nobody talks about it. I've seen, and that's what bothers me. I've seen so much praise for certain games that I just open on my PC. I'm like, man, this is like so blurry. It doesn't matter how good the game looks in terms of the whatever, like Uncharted, these Naughty Dog games. It would be fantastic. This game is a really really good game. It just looks amazing, but it's like Vaseline over the screen, and then nobody. I mean, you have to go to that subreddit FTAA to see people complaining about that. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a comparison coming up. So I'm downloading a Skyrim texture mod that goes up to 8K, and I'm gonna do comparisons with the 8K textures with TAA versus like 2K textures with TAA off, because I want to see how much details being removed. Because that's the problem with TAA, is that since it's removing information, at least certain implementations of it, right? Because TAA is such a variable and dynamic thing that, unlike past anti-aliasing solutions, that means it's the most inconsistent of them all and the most complex. And since we know developers mess things up very easily, having a complex or very variable industry standard is definitely not a great thing, right? Because that means some games are going to be super blurry, some games slightly blurry, some games very bad ghosting, some games no ghosting. But yeah, I do want to test it with Skyrim's TA specifically to see how much detail is being removed. Because if you're spending that much performance in a VRAM, on 8K and also disk space on 8K textures when it looks the same as like a 2K or 4K textures. It's kind of like, then what's the point for pushing for that higher fidelity, you know?
Absolutely. And let me ask you, do you think it is too much to ask, or is impossible, or it is not reasonable, or whatever? Like to just design the game with lower resolution for things that you know you're not gonna see any aliasing because it's just like a flat texture or something, and then really put the pixels where they really matter. You know, the fine details and the places where you're going to see that aliasing, and just like that's your anti-aliasing. Like, is that like is that like not obvious? Because as soon as I heard from you, you can actually have more or less pixels on the hair and more or less pixels here and there, and you can use a different anti-aliasing for some of the different things. I was like, so then why didn't they just don't look at the game and say, okay, this needs more pixels, this needs less pixels, this needs more or less anti-aliasing, or don't use anti-aliasing at all, just give me more pixels where they are needed, and that's it.
Yeah, for hair, it's more about how many strands of hair there are and also the shader on the hair, more so than the pixels for how it'll look. But if you're asking why they don't just like render more things at native, obviously you know about performance, and I guess they're afraid that if they well, if they're using a public engine, obviously the max settings are going to be the default max settings because they don't like to mess with stuff on that. But if it's their own game engine, they know the engine, they made it themselves. You know, why aren't they pushing for higher settings? I guess it's because they might be afraid of like bad stigma. Like they make games for the lowest common denominator. Like they consider like the average Joe or like a really dumb person accidentally messing something up. So then enthusiasts and people that know what they're doing have a worse experience. And it does suck. I wish they didn't do that. Even if they just leave the settings in like a config file or something, that's better than nothing. But yeah, they our technical leads, they're always considering this stuff. Like game developers don't like hiding higher graphic options from people. It's typically not our choice. So that's one thing I would definitely put on management because they care about the general public's perception of the game and stuff.
So basically, you're saying that, of course, the programmers and the people who know and the people who make the game, they of course they think about this stuff all the time, and they might, but they might not be encouraged to do it because maybe um, if you do that kind of work, that's gonna be only for high-end PCs, and then on the console, that's not gonna work. Then they have to do something different for the console. That's more money, and maybe they don't see the incentive. Like people are not gonna buy more the game because it looks absolutely amazing on a 4K screen with a 4090. Is that what you are? Is that what you mean?
Kinda. And it's also the fact that for PC ports, I mean, management looks at PC ports as kind of like the least important thing. So it's just like because they make the game for the console, they build it around the console and the PC port, unless you have an independent studio porting the game, which I actually think is a great thing. Like Beanox, Call of Duty does have Force TAA now, unfortunately, but disregarding that, there's like so many like custom options and settings other than that. So that's like an example of like a when a studio when they have a dedicated studio dedicated to the PC version, it tends to be better. Same thing with Sony's games. They have a studio named like Nixie's that ports games, and even though the consoles only use like TEA, they actually add other anti-aliasing options. If Insomniac made their own PC port of the game, they definitely wouldn't have included other AA options. They would have just included the console defaults. So that's the thing is that a lot of PC ports are just the console version of the game with like some generic scalability and stuff. So they lack a lot of basic features. Whatever AA is used on the console, that's all you're gonna get nowadays, really.
And you don't think that any developer would even consider, okay, just let's lower the scope of the game, because I would actually prefer less push for better lighting, and of course lighting makes all the difference, and I agree. Yeah, it looks fantastic, But do you think they would ever consider, okay, just lower the scope, lower the lighting, lower, the draw distance, the size, whatever, to give you more clarity, more sharpness, to get the performance necessary with those? Because here's what I believe: the day we get a game that just looks like the real, just resolution, like it performs, okay, we're talking about it performs very well and it looks so sharp, you're gonna just put any other game coming out just side by side and people are gonna see, wow, the way the industry is going is not the best. I want my games to look like this. It just looks like a diamond. Why am I getting these games looking like trash? Because just trying to get more lighting or whatever. That's what my decision, that's what I would do: just reduce the scope, reduce the push for other graphical fidelities. Because here's why: yes, the lighting might be fantastic, but the overall impression is blurry. Then it doesn't matter, the lighting is fantastic. I cannot see it well. It's like you have a fantastic game or a fantastic screen and then you need to use your glasses and you don't have them. Yes, it's fantastic, but I cannot see it. It looks blurry. I need my glasses. See, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have TAA built into your eyes basically, so you
Yeah,
don't need TAA. Yeah, if the jaggies are too much, just take off your glasses, right?
yeah. No, what I'm saying is that why can't, instead of we trying to push, because what I am seeing is that the more we push and all the the big channels, they hype up ray tracing. I don't know if it's because Nvidia sponsorship or other sponsorship or whatever, they like the push for graphics, and that's okay. That's, just, if you like that, that's your opinion. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. But what I see is that the more they push the graphics, the less resolution we get, more shimmery, more ghosting, more issues, more blurriness. And what I want, and correct me if, yeah, or not correct me, like tell me, like share with me your opinion, like how what do you think about this? What I believe, like the real future, is like just insane amount of pixels, insane amount of frame rates, like performance, just absolutely crazy. We're talking about 16K, thousands of frames per second. HDR, of course, all the brightness we can get, full screen, just insane. I think that one day we're gonna get there, but what I believe is that we're going to get to almost photorealistic graphics at some point, but then it's gonna be all blurry, like it is right now, or even more blurry. And then we're gonna realize, okay, we got to the point where the games look almost real. What else can we improve? Oh, why don't we get the game? Why don't we make the games look sharper again? And then they start reducing the blurriness and they start clearing things up, because you cannot, basically, once you get to that end of diminishing returns where you cannot tell the difference, if you have more bouncing of the lighting or something like that, then they say, okay, let's improve something else. And that forgotten thing, which is like the clarity of the game, no ghosting, all that, is gonna make the biggest difference, in my opinion. But what do you think about that? Am I like out of my mind by thinking that, or do you have a different opinion? What is the perfect, evolution or direction that the industry should go, in your opinion? What is that your take on that?
Well, I will say that I have a bit more of an optimistic view on the future of things. So between my own efforts, Digital Foundry's upcoming video, Blur Busters, and just the fact that this topic's being more discussed than ever right now, I do think that we can expect some games that will come out with more anti-aliasing options that otherwise wouldn't have had them. I'm not sure how much or to what extent, but I do think things will get slightly better. And as for the best evolution of graphics from here on out, I mean, look, I do think that we should be. I believe that anti-aliasing first begins. The first process of anti-aliasing isn't the actual anti-aliasing solution that you choose, like SMAA or TAA. I believe that it begins with the game design, like how much aliasing is in your game to begin with. How are you authoring materials? What wire AA, all the stuff I showed in my video that you watched.
Yeah,
No, not everyone here watched it, of course, but anti-aliasing begins with game design. So I do believe that game developers definitely should be mitigating aliasing to begin with, and then adding like a spatial single frame AA like SMAA to their game. But that's just something that would obviously benefit people like us. But I do think that the overall future of graphics and computer generated graphics is just improving existing TEA, like mitigating its own flaws, working around sharpness, motion issues, ghosting. Like I do believe that is the future because there are some games with like decent TEA and there can be more improvements done. Like, we're not completely done with it. Like we definitely stopped innovating on it because like since it solves all of our aliasing problems and a lot of people just aren't sensitive to its flaws, they haven't saw a reason to improve it, but it can improve and I do think that's the direction we should go in. And the reason why is because things like nanite, this is like the only example where I can't use AA off. Nanite, and it's kind of Epic Games' fault, is there's just so much like high detail that and some projects like force nanite because it makes game development faster. And even though it doesn't help performance, it makes game development faster. So it's going to be utilized. It's kind of like a non-negotiation thing. That really can't work without like TEA because of how it was designed. So either Epic Games would need to change something, or developers would need to use a different engine. So that's why the future kind of just has to be improving existing TEA. And I can give you an example of a good game with TEA.
Sorry, before
Fortnite.
you jump to that, about what you just mentioned about nanite. I see that too. The TAA sometimes it has to do with the LOD, like in Red Dead Redemption, for example. You can actually turn it off, but then you see like a weird LOD popping issue, like the trees they start appearing very close to the camera, and then you can actually go to the config file and increase the draw distance like insanely. I think that there's like a number by default is like 1 point something, I don't know. You can increase that to 20, something crazy, and then the performance goes down the toilet. We're talking about 2 frames per second on a 4090, something like that. And it has to do basically the TAA. It has to do with the LOD system or something like that. Like that you cannot turn it off. It just breaks the game. So now you're saying that nanite has like, okay, because it has this nanite, you have to have TAA. It's just not gonna work without it.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Like I've tried disabling like in a game that is or nanite's an optional feature because wasn't built around nanite. It's just something you can add if you want. You can obviously disable it and disable TEA and it's fine, but Epic Games did not make it nanite with this in mind. And I've tried tweaking nanite values, it just doesn't work. The you know, when you get close to the camera, more details are getting pumped in the nanite, and there's just so much detail in it that it's very uh aliased. Of course, they should still provide options for users, even if they're using nanite, just because they might have motion sickness or something. But I do genuinely believe that the future is just improving TA. And there's two ways to do LOD, by the way, like traditional LOD. There's fade in and there's pop in. So some games will like the tree will just pop in out of nowhere, and then in other games it'll like fade in slowly. And a lot of developers will use fade in for TA, but then pop in for like no TA.
Oh, that's why. So then, oh, okay. But I'm talking about, yeah, that's what popping is. It's not there, and then suddenly it is there. But the popping is just like crazy. Like you're without TAA, like in Red Dead, you see like a tree just appearing at 5-10 meters away. It's like right there. It's crazy. By the way, to your opinion, like yes, of course that's probably the direction we're going, because like what you're saying, like there's new technologies that aren't not negotiable because they make game development easier and they use TAA. That of course that's where we're gonna go, and we know we're going to go there. But it's something is similar. And now that you mentioned the Blur Busters chief, not that he has this opinion, but it is something similar with sample and holds. Okay, we have sample and hold display, sample and hold technology. We had CRTs, that motion clarity, and then we go to sample and hold for I don't know for what reason, maybe because it's less uncomfortable for some people, maybe the flickering or something. And now, of course, we need sample and hold to get that HDR, to get all the brightness possible. And of course, sample and hold, brute force, very high, hertz. That's the future, and I understand that. But the thing is, we have to go very far away. We have to go, 500 hertz, even 1,000 hertz, just to catch up with CRT technology in terms of motion clarity, and that doesn't. Okay, we're almost there. I mean, we could say that we, of course, there are some monitors that have even better motion clarity than CRTs. VR headsets that they have a lot better motion clarity than CRTs. But what I'm talking about is your common 144 hertz sample and hold gaming monitor. That's just trash in comparison with a CRT when it comes to motion clarity, unless it has some kind of backlight strobing technique or something to reduce the persistence. So I don't think it was a good idea to eliminate the CRT technology to then have to wait how many years? CRT ended like in 2003 or 6, something like that. We are in 2024. So how many, almost 20 years we have to wait to get that motion clarity we had before? That doesn't seem like a good idea to me. So it is a similar situation. Yes, TAAs, that's the direction we're going. And at some point, is gonna be the best thing ever, or temporal things, DLSS, FSR3. This is all the same idea, same kind of technology. So yes, we're gonna get there, but if you open an old game right now today, you open that old game, no anti-aliasing, and it looks sharper than most of the games we're getting today, and you don't get that super low resolution in some of the elements that you are for sure. You know, okay, this is not 4K. So we're gonna wait a long time before we get back that clarity, and that's what hurts to me. The first thing that we sacrifice is clarity. And what I would do, the direction, like if I was in control of the direction of the industry, I would say clarity is a must. It is the most important thing. You try to keep improving things, but you cannot sacrifice clarity. It cannot be sacrificed to get other things. That's what I would do. Maybe that would not be the best idea. Maybe that would slow down everything. But that's what I would like to see. I would like to see the improvements without the sacrifices on the areas that for me are the most important things. But of course, that's just my bias. That's just what I like. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I do think that the reason lighting is chosen over clarity is for the same reason why physics aren't as good as they were in older games now. Is that basically graphics in games sell more than like physics do? Like you look at GTA 4's physics and how people like build the
Insane.
stuff. It got downgraded in GTA 5 and yeah, because like you're obviously using resources on that and you can't push the graphics better. And the graphics will just sell more to like the general populace, like, wow, this game looks pretty realistic or whatever. And lighting is, I would say, it's not as important to me as clarity, but I would say that it's like more noticeable because someone could have bad eyesight, they'd be sitting far away from the screen, but you'll notice better lighting in those situations, but you won't notice, you might not notice the clarity that much.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Especially on YouTube, when you just release a trailer. Like
yeah.
look at Rockstar. They released the GTA 6 trailer at 30 frames per second. How come? Because people don't know. They just a YouTube video, 30 frames per second. And these problems that we're talking about, these clarity issues on YouTube, you cannot see that. You have to open the game in your PC in front of your eyes with your own, display to see the clarity. We're talking about the differences. So for advertisement purposes and just to sell the game to people, and most people don't know anything about this because they've never seen better, it doesn't matter. So I think you're right there. It's just follow. It's the money. It's like, how can we sell this? How can we show people that this looks good? Of course, lighting is gonna make a much bigger difference. Like, there's no way they can advertise, okay, this game runs like at 500 frames per second. You wait until you see it on your 500 hertz OLED. It's gonna blow you away. You cannot advertise that because, you can try show like a slow motion video or something like that, but people are not gonna understand how amazing that is because they don't have the 500 hertz monitor and they are not seeing that, and you cannot show that on YouTube, and you cannot show that level of clarity, differences. It's just like a thing that you have to see. So yeah, I get it. That's why.
Yeah, it is. So obviously they make games for the lowest common denominator and they also make games for the average consumer. So That means they're making games for consoles and they're making games for people that aren't that tech savvy. So obviously that ends up meaning that we get blurry graphics and good lighting. There's obviously it's such a multifaceted equation as to why things are like this. Like there's so many different things you can blame, which is why it's so hard to fix because there's so many different issues you have to address before you can actually fix the issue. So it's not just as easy as saying average consumer, consoles, or lazy devs, or bad management. Like it's everything, or it could be a different thing depending on what studio we're talking about. Like Rockstar Games, I mean, they obviously make the games for console first. I mean, GTA 5 is like broken online. They don't have like any anti-cheat. It's not safe. Um, there's there's a lot of the patches that have come out for the console haven't made their way to GTA 5, like some bug fixes, the ray tracing update, and then they also released their games like a year or two later on PC. So like Rockstar Games doesn't care that much about PC, as just one example.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't. It's a it's a shame, man. I just want to say I'm going to read the comments. I'm not sure if you want to stick, for too long. I'm fine, and I'm enjoying the conversation. But I just want to say that I will, make sure to read the comments. And I see some people had some questions for you. Let me see if I can find some of them. For example, Isham asked you, do you mind asking him about reshade anti-aliasing alternative for those who like to play with TAA off?
Yeah, because if you're using TA off in a game that doesn't actually provide it, then that means they're not going to have other solutions for you.
Yeah.
And even if they do, it could be pretty bad. And I actually do have reshade AA alternatives. I actually made a post 8 hours ago on it on Reddit. So I'm not sure if this guy saw that post and is asking you so I can share it, or if it's just a coincidence. But I
Well,
do
absolutely.
actually.
Share that if you can copy that. You can post it like a comment. I will update the description of this video. Like, let's talk about some of the solutions. Like, what can we do as gamers? Yeah, we'll identify the problem.
Yeah.
But what can we do to get a better experience, basically?
So obviously we're more limited than the developers are with what we can do, but there are some things we can do from the user end of things. I will say that that link I gave to that guy didn't work. It got blocked. But
Already.
to explain it, I basically have I made like a reshade anti-aliasing presets. They're all experimental, but you can basically try them all out and see which works best for you.
Well,
There's
look,
also a
send me a limit, an email, and I'm gonna post that in the description of this live stream after we finish.
isn't there a private chat on here?
I don't know.
There's
Yeah,
something
there's a
called
private chat. Yeah,
yeah.
there's a private chat.
I sent
Okay,
it
let
there.
me see
That
if
works.
if I can copy this. Let me open this.
Might be able to right click it and click copy link address.
Yeah, yeah, I don't have that option actually. Oh, let me see. Wait.
It also comes with a reshade add-on. It only works in some games like Cyberpunk, but it's supposed to de-blur TA. So if it doesn't work in the game that you're using, you can just disable TA and use the reshade.
Okay, so this is the link to your reshade to your post on Reddit about the reshade anti-aliasing mod.
hmm
Okay, and do you like does that reshade so that's a reshade preset that you created? Does that have like of course like a strength setting?
Well, you can edit the shaders yourself. Obviously, I tuned it to how I like it and what I thought
Oh,
was
you mean
was
the
best.
preset? The preset. It's not like you created a new shader. That's like your fine-tuned anti-aliasing.
Yeah, I'm working on my own reshade shader, but right now I have these are just public shaders. I did tweak one of them for a different luminance algorithm, like just some small tweaks so that it clamps things better. Um, so that's why it's better to download mine than the official ones on GitHub. But yeah, these are mostly made by other people and they're just presets. But I think some of them work quite well. So If you
Yeah.
are playing without any anti-aliasing, give them a try.
Yeah, the thing is that it's becoming increasingly difficult to turn off TAA because, I mean, for example, I turned off TAA in Uncharted 4, and it just breaks the game completely. When you move the camera, you see like semicircles, like you see like some semicircles like this surrounding the screen. It's like so weird. Like I've never seen that before. It's like completely broken. It looks so much better. Oh my god. It's like unbelievable. They did that to that game. It just looks so much better. Yes, you have shimmering everywhere, but they should have. You should be able to fix that because some things, when you turn that off, it looks so much better. But you cannot even use it, even if you use reshade with anti-aliasing, because you see like this weird circular shapes that I think that's actually still there. If it's still there if you have the TAA, but it just becomes so clear once you turn it off. But it is still there. But the thing is, it is so blurry that you cannot even detect that is there. That's the thing. I don't know why. Like I've never seen that before. So you have that issue, but sometimes you have like those LOD issues, or you see some things just get completely broken when you turn off TAA. So it is becoming almost impossible to play with no TAA with these games, because also you see very low resolution. I mean, for example, I was praising Insomniac. If you turn off TAA or DLSS and Ratchet and Clank, it just that's not 4K, and that's my complaint. And actually, I think I heard from Digital Foundry that the Insomnia developers specifically that work on that part of the game of Ratchet and Clank, they are subscribed to, or at least they follow the FTAA Reddit, and they are
Yeah.
like, okay, we're gonna give you the option to turn it off, and you turn it off, and it's just a mess. Like like there's no way, even if you use that reshade preset or whatever, it's unfixable because the resolution is so low, and it is impressive. How can you go from that to the way the game actually looks, which is absolutely amazing, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, maybe for example, this developer, maybe they can tell me, see, we are right. The game looks fantastic with TAA, and actually look how many details and how much things you can have thanks to having a lower resolution base. But that low resolution base is being completely fixed with the TAA. So see, we are right. If we do what you're asking us to do, which is just increase the pixels everywhere so you get a sharper picture, yes, it's gonna look sharper, but now the performance is like 10% of what we were getting before, or something like that. And then I might have to say, yeah, you're right then. But why Red Dead looks so bad? Why the Uncharted games look so bad? So that's why. That's what I. That's what I think.
So there's regarding Nixies. Nixies is a Dutch company. One of the reasons they um added more options than just TEA is because someone on that subreddit has a friend that works at Nixies, and he told
Ah,
them about it. However, I will say in Spider-Man, SMAA in that game is kind of like broken. Like it looks identical to AA off. Basically, they didn't like make the SMAA strong enough. So also could be another reason why SMAA sucks, is that it's very weak, or wasn't added properly. I mean, of
yeah,
course,
but
there's going to be some inherent issues because the game was built around TEA, but that was an issue in Spider-Man. I'm not sure about Ratchet and Clank.
well, but Spider-Man. I mean, that's like the worst SMAA I've ever seen ever, and any game's not close. It just looks like 720p resolution. Yeah, 4K, and it's just the thing just looks so pixelated. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Like I can see the staircase effect from 10 meters away. Is absolutely insane. Like 4K should not look like that. Is my point, and
Mhm.
that's because it's not 4K, probably. So, I mean, do you want to? I mean, did I interrupt you in your thought process? I was just reading some of the comments. Maybe you can answer some of this, um, questions or concerns. You let me know.
No, you didn't interrupt me. I
Okay.
basically said what I need to say about that. What comment would you like me to, or
Yeah, so no,
should
so
we
here
address?
Astria says, I hope you'll discuss persistence blur. I wonder if developers even really know about it. Um, so yeah, I also wonder the same thing, like, because what I see everywhere is, oh, you just need 60 frames per second. And I'm like, we don't have CRTs anymore. 60 frames per second is not enough. Why would you want to have a 4090 with the best display and this and that to play with barely 60 frames per second? And that's what I see from um, the push that I see generally on the internet. I'm like, if you have a 4090, 120 FPS is not enough. You should be wanting to get that clarity, that amazing responsiveness of a much higher frame rate. And that's what I wonder the same, if developers really know that we actually need a lot more frames. So if they are targeting 60 frames per second across the board, or even less, sometimes just 30 frames per second, like probably GTA 6 or something like that, that's like, no, you need to lower the scope or lower everything you can, because we need more frames.
Yeah, so games in general, like pretty much everyone on Reddit and YouTube, they complain about 30 FPS even if it's on a console. And yet developers keep targeting it because it doesn't affect game sales, and they know that like people that don't use social media to complain about these things probably won't notice the 30 FPS, but they'll notice the better graphics. It sucks, but that's their philosophy. And as for why it can be difficult to get 60 FPS on like better hardware and PC, is because of multiple reasons. Number one, if the consoles are targeting 30 FPS and they have decent specs themselves, that would mean you need a GPU that's at least is twice as powerful at the same exact settings to output, because you're outputting twice as much frames. And then you also need to increase the resolution, because even though they're targeting 4K, they're using it upscaling a lot of the time. And then you also need to account for, you know, console optimizations, and then you also need to account for the fact you want more than 60 frames. So all in all, when you count that all up, you do need quite a bit beefier specs in the consoles in order to get like 120 FPS on a game that runs like at 30 FPS on consoles, right?
Yeah, of course, but it all depends on the scope, because we have PlayStation 2 games that are run at 60 frames per second. So what I
Mhm.
would target, like if I was developing a game for the console, I would target, the best looking game I can deliver that runs at 120 FPS, and then have that quality mode that runs at 60. So 30 would be like completely out of the equation. So that game would just fly on the PC. That's what I would target. But of course, it's what you're saying. Like, a lot of people that don't know anything about performance, they notice more that the game has, more fidelity, even if it's 30 frames per second, because they don't know better.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't affect the sales, end of the story. That's it. That's why we're like, I mean, that's why, if it doesn't affect their money, they're not gonna be, they're not gonna care about. The other thing I wanted to ask you, is it possible for you to do an Unreal Engine project and add asynchronous reprojection? Like, there is a game you can download. It's like
Yeah.
a
It's
like
for
a
Unity.
did you try? Is that Unity?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he made it in Unity. It looks a lot like Unity.
Okay, I didn't know if it was Unity or Unreal Engine, but did you try that asynchronous reprojection project?
I did, and I even spoke with them. If you go to the comments of that video, you'll see me speaking to him about like some ideas. Like I suggested doing overscan to him to hide the reprojection artifacts on the edges of the screen, and he said it was something he already tried. Um, and it was like blurry, and because like Unity didn't like it, but in theory that should be something that works. And
Be-
re- yeah, reprojection is something I'm interested in, but I do think it's something that NVIDIA would be better to tackle, because there's a lot of issues with reprojection that people don't know about, and that's why they didn't just, otherwise it would have just been enabled a long time ago. So it is something that actually needs active R&D, but I do think it's something worth investing into.
Absolutely. I mean, I am 100% convinced that NVIDIA is working on it right now. I mean, I am sure they are trying to AI all the problems. Basically, AI the occlusion artifacts, or the corners of the screen, whatever the issues of asynchronous reprojection is, I'm sure they're trying to AI a solution. Because I mean, just think about that. What we're talking about here is asynchronous reprojection outside of VR. Okay, so imagine that it doesn't matter if your PC can give you 60 frames per second on the game, like natively, like render 60 frames, or even 40 or 50, whatever. You have a 500 hertz monitor, and with asynchronous reprojection, you can deliver 500 frames per second to your monitor, and the only difference is gonna be if you can get a higher base frame rate, you're gonna see less artifacts. But you're not even going to see a difference on the input response. Correct me if I am wrong. The input lag will be exactly the same as if you were getting real 500 frames per second. You just get the less artifacts if you have a higher base frame rate. But the artifacts are not a deal breaker at all,
You
at least in my opinion.
you get I'm not sure about click to photon latency, but I do know like the latency of you moving your mouse or whatever will be just as fast. Obviously, excluding there's obviously other areas where latency, like Windows itself has latency, your display has latency, the adapter HDMI, whatever you're using has some
Mhm.
latency. So there will be some latency, but yeah, it'll basically be like you're running at like 500 FPS. I'm not sure about click to photon again, but like I do know uh, that much at least.
So yeah, so think about that. Like that's just absolutely insane, because that makes high frame rate gaming possible. Like your PC, like right now, you might get 60 frames per second if you have a high end
Mm.
PC on every single game on the market right now. Anything that comes out. But now you get your 500 hertz monitor, and you're like, okay, I cannot play any AAA games at 500 frames per second. It's just impossible. But if the game had this technology, this asynchronous reprojection, yes, you can. And it's gonna feel very responsive. So I think I'm convinced that something like that, maybe a combination between asynchronous reprojection, frame generation, AI, all this stuff, that's gonna be that's going to make possible, um, you know, to fix this problem, persistence blur, to get more frames, to get good motion clarity
Yeah,
with HDR. And I don't know why it hasn't happened yet, because when I tried that mod that I was talking about, I was like, man, this is ready like right now. Give it to me. I want to use it on all the games I have like right now. Just what do we have to do? A mod on Real Engine,
yeah,
plugin, whatever they have to do, or Unity, or I don't know. Just
I could
give it to me
explain.
right now.
Yeah, I could explain why it's not ready right now. So it's something that like Epic Games or Nvidia or AMD would have to do, not something like any random developer could do. I mean, they could technically do something, but I don't think it'd be great. So the issues with it is that demo, it's a very simple demo that's like very easy to run. So you're actually getting you can actually achieve that real frame rate if you wanted to. The problem
Yeah.
with asynchronous reprojection outside of VR is that if you're not actually able to hit that frame rate that you're reprojecting to, like sure the input's responsive, but you just get random like stutters and stuff. So it's like playing with traversal stutter or shader compilation. So that's the issue with current reprojection that I haven't been able to work around yet, and I
Oh wait,
assume I
let me
bet
see if I
nobody will be able to.
understand. Let me see if I understand. So on that demo, when you cap the frame rate to 30 or 60, and then you're getting 120, your your GPU could give you 120 frames, but it's not. Why would
Yeah.
that matter? Like my question is, why is different if you cap the frame rate to 60 and your GPU is like at 20%? Why is that difference if you cap the frame to 60 but your GPU is like at 85% or something like that?
Well, I'm not a reprojection expert. I just know that that's a phenomenon with it. But what I can say is that reprojection itself, has especially good reprojection has a cost itself, and I guess if if you're reprojecting to a certain frame rate that your game isn't actually able to achieve, for some reason it just hitches behind.
Oh, I get what
And
you're saying. Like the engine might be you might be hitching if it's like 500 frames
Could
per second,
be.
because the engine itself, like for example, like Starfield, they were saying like the cap was like 100 and something. I forgot, like in that Digital Foundry video, they say that there was a cap that was weird. Like the engine won't go higher than that, and then if you try to use asynchronous reprojection to get 500 frames per second, the engine doesn't even want to get there.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
don't
what you're
know.
referring to?
Well, I don't know if this is an issue with reprojection or just the fact that game engines weren't made with reprojection in mind. But all I know is that like unless you're actually able to hit that frame rate like internally. So I saw your camera disappear.
Yeah,
Were you hearing me?
yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, I have no idea if it's a game engine limitation or if it's in limitation with reprojection, but that definitely is an issue that um I encountered and apparently he did as well.
So you're saying that if your PC what is not powerful enough to give you, like for example, in that demo, 120 frames per second, I'm I am capping the frame rate to 30 or to 60 just because I want to see the technology. But of course, my PC can give me 120 frames per second on that game. But you're saying that if my PC was not able to give me 120 FPS in that game, then I might not get the same experience.
Yeah. Well, what you can do is I guess you could go into like your power settings in Windows and like cap your CPU at like 1% and go into the demo and maybe that'll be enough to lower your real frame rate below 120 and then you can try it out if you want to
Oh,
experience it yourself to see what it's like. But yeah,
okay.
basically.
Okay, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's
so
the way you can try it out.
okay. I mean, are you still good to keep going? We've been here for 1 hour and 26 minutes. I just wanted to cover some of the questions we have.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
free.
okay,
I'm
so
at
let's
night now.
see. Yeah, so feel free to drop the comments. We haven't been reading comments, but I just want to cover this. So will FSR3 mods ever be free of games HUD glitches? I think you touched on that already. And one thing I want to say is that I think it is not actually a bad idea what AMD, one of the ways AMD
Mhm.
is dealing with this, which is, you know, just rendering just the real frames for the HUD, so to not have any of those generated AI, it's not AI generated frames, but those generated frames do not do it with the HUD. I think it's not a bad idea because on a sample and hold display, which is what most people are using, 60 FPS 120 hertz looks the same as 60 FPS 60 hertz. So what I'm saying right now is that you don't need that motion clarity for the HUD, and yes, you will see the difference in the sharpness, I think maybe, but it's not gonna look like a double image. Like for example, if you use a strobing, if you have one of these LG OLEDs or any LCD display with backlight strobing, you definitely see double images. Okay, so when you're strobing, if you have 60 frames per second and 120 hertz, you will see a clear double image effect, and it might be very bothersome, but most people are not going to see that if they're just using sample and hold display. So I think it's actually a good idea to do that, but I don't know, what's your take on it?
It is a pretty good idea. Um, and I assume AMD did that because then they would have to train their frame generation on HUD elements and to take that into account. This is just easier so they can actually, especially since they're competing against NVIDIA and they don't have the resources and they're also starting from behind, that they can actually just focus on the actual frame generation quality itself without being delayed by that. I do think that if you can interpolate the HUD and you can interpolate it well, that it's probably better to do that, and I think NVIDIA is doing a decent job at it. The biggest issue is games are, not implementing NVIDIA's frame generation correctly, or they're using an older version or something, but it can handle HUD pretty well.
Well, I don't know anything about NVIDIA frame generation because my 30 series GPU doesn't have the new optical flow accelerator. What do you think about that? Do you think that really it wouldn't be able to work, or that's just a shenanigan from NVIDIA?
Well, I've viewed DLSS source code before, like the upscaling, and what I can say is that when I viewed it, it was all written in CUDA, which like non-RTX GPUs like really don't support. This is DLS2 source code. So I heard people back in the day when DLS2 came out saying like, oh, they're not just not enabling it for like the GTX 1080 or whatever.
Mhm.
But like the thing is you actually just couldn't enable it. Like it was written in CUDA, which you know that doesn't support or have. So I technically, so what I think is that it's not possible out of the box. Like it's just not set up to work with it, and it's not like an arbitrary limitation. However, I do think NVIDIA could, if they wanted to, rewrite the code to work on earlier RTX cards with good quality. So it's a yes and a no kind of question, depending on how you define it. Like no, the current frame generation doesn't work on the cards, but yes, it could. You know, they could make
Yeah,
some changes.
basically they design a brand new thing to work exclusively with your brand new GPU. And yeah, maybe that exact same brand new code doesn't work on the old one, but of course they could just make a little bit of effort and deliver a version that might not be as good, but it might work on the previous GPUs, of course. But they're not gonna just do that effort for nothing. You already bought the GPU.
NVIDIA is the Apple of gaming, basically,
Yeah.
where they they want you to they need to give you a reason to upgrade, and just a card being more fast than the previous card isn't necessarily always enough. So that's added to their value proposition. And I'm honestly kind of happy that NVIDIA chooses quality over compatibility, because I already know that AMD is going to make like a more compatible version. So if I don't upgrade, I'm going to have theirs still. But then when I do upgrade, I'm going to have a better version waiting for me later. So because of AMD, I actually am happy NVIDIA goes that route. But if AMD didn't exist, it would certainly suck, you know.
Yeah. So Gang says modders and small indie teams make better HDR and sharp graphics. How can big companies mess it up? I guess because they don't play the games. I don't know, man. It's so weird that I can sit here on my chair like after having an OLED TV for like a year and a half and be fixing HDR implementations. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know anything about color grading. I don't have a color emitter. I've never seen a reference monitor in my life. Like how can I be judging the work of a professional that actually gets paid to make these things? It's insane. But yeah, you already, you know,
Yeah.
alluded to what might be the cause of that. It's just like the work is segmented, and yeah, maybe the HDR guy actually did a great job, but then somebody else messed it up, and then they cannot fix it. I don't know.
Yeah, compartmentalization and poor leadership. Leadership just not allowing you to do like you can't just do anything you want on a game if you're working for a company. Like if it's your own game, your own project, you're not bought out, or the publisher's giving you full reign, and then sure you can do whatever you want. But a lot of developers don't have that freedom. They need permission to do certain things, especially if they're in a different field. Like they're supposed to work on this part of the game right here, and so them doing HDR would be like, hey, what are you doing? You know, like you're not allowed to. Like I've actually no, this is actually unrelated, but we were sponsored by AMD, and I took my time to implement some like I think it was NVIDIA Hairworks at the time because it was an older game into our engine, and it was like removed because of our AMD partnership. But so that's obviously because of a sponsorship issue. But like even things like that aren't sponsored can just get removed because that's not what you're supposed to be doing. And yeah, man, it sucks when stuff like that happens.
Yeah, and I guess it might happen that some of the developers that work on the game, they're like, man, they ruined my work, and they just added a color filter and they messed it up. And they might not be happy with that, but then they cannot change it or something.
Yeah, it's a very complex issue, and it's
Hosting
gonna take.
says, do you think new TV 2024 will be revolution for best quality ever as G4 and C4 model as example in LG? Man, honestly, what I think about new TVs is that they are all doing the same thing. I'm not sure if they have like a rule, like on the industry, you cannot jump like this and just suddenly give you a bunch of performance. They have like an agreement. Okay, it has to be this percentage improvement. We cannot just release all the brightness and stuff. So each year the improvements are just a little bit, and it's not worth it. Like from one year to the next. Like if you have a C3 or G3, I don't see absolutely any reason to. Or even if you have like a G1 or G2, like the difference is not big enough to justify the cost, especially with when you have the same technology. Like if you already have a WRGB OLED, you're gonna get another WRGB OLED. I would not do that. If I get another display, it has to be a different technology because the jump is not big enough to justify getting again the same thing, just with a minor improvement here and there. So I don't really see the excitement for the same technology. Now, if they come out with something different, let's say, J OLED or something like that, is now through RGBs, like something completely different, and yeah, that makes sense. You might get better color saturation, or more full screen brightness, or other features or something. But I don't get like very excited just to see, oh, the C4 now is gonna be 10% brighter. That's not worth it. So I don't know what's your take on that. By the way, which display do you use?
So I'm on PC. I use a monitor. My desk isn't deep enough for a TV. Even you say the bigger the better. It's like your slogan, and I
Yeah.
do tend to agree with that. Um, there are some benefits to monitors though. Obviously, TVs are capped at 120 hertz. Monitors go higher because I don't know. I guess TV manufacturers aren't interested in ultra high refresh rates yet, mostly because it's less noticeable on a console, and that's what TVs are typically used for. But also PPI is very important. So ideally, a big TV is more immersive and better. But because the PPI increases, you also need to get a higher resolution. So I was doing an experiment where I streamed. I had my phone hooked up directly to my PC in an application that would display the phone,
Hmm.
display the game on my phone. So my phone's only 6 inches and it's 1440p. So that's a really high PPI. That's like 400 PPI. That's beyond a Retina display. And when I was using that, I couldn't notice any aliasing in my game. Like on my monitor, the aliasing was unbearable. But when I
Yeah.
was using my phone, I could actually play with TAA off. So
And
just
I,
thinking about that
and
is
actually, I would like to try that. Can you send me what's the program you use? Can you tell that what was the application you use for that?
display.
Because I mean, not only that, the screen that these phones have is a lot better than any TV coming out. I mean, it's not close. I have an S23 Ultra, and I also purchased unfortunately, I had to purchase an iPhone 15 Plus, with the one with the bigger screen. And yeah, because I hate Apple, that's why I'm saying unfortunately.
Yeah.
And yeah, it looks fantastic. The screen is absolutely amazing, and my LG C1 cannot come even close to the color saturation, the full screen brightness, just the vibrancy is on another level. So I would definitely like to see one of the games that I play on my phone, because it's just gonna be absolutely incredible when it comes to HDR impact.
Do you know
But
what
yeah, that's my take on new TVs. Yeah, go ahead.
do you know what resolution your phone is? The iPhone?
Yeah, it's just 1080p. I mean the iPhone. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it should be the same. Yeah, it's the same as the S23. Yeah,
So it's a 1440p display.
man, I'm not sure. I didn't look at the settings for the Apple.
Yeah.
I'm not
I
sure.
was just saying the PPI will probably be, since it's 15 inches, my phone's only like 6 inches since my phone's a bit older. The PPI will be higher, but I still think it's over 300 PPI, so you should be
Yeah,
fine.
for sure. I mean, mine is 6.8. That is 6.7.
Mine's
Diagonal
5.8.
6.7. Huh?
Yeah.
Yours is 5.8. You say?
Yeah, 5.8 inches.
Okay.
I prefer
No, but
smaller
still,
phones. I
I
use
mean,
one-handed a lot.
yeah, I open a 720p video on my phone. It doesn't bother me. And we know how that looks on a big screen. It's terrible. Yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
matters. that's why, when it comes to new displays, I do think it is a very exciting product. This new, the 8K TV is coming from TCL, and they are 3D. That's like the most exciting display coming, and that's what I would buy if I had a chance. I would buy that, even when. I mean, by the way, I want to ask you that. Do you think we can be playing 3D games on those displays? I don't think so, because it is without glasses. It's 3D without glasses. So I guess that there has to be some kind of SDK, or like there has to be a specific support for the game or the video player or something for that kind of 3D to work. So I guess that you might get one of those, yes, 8K, 120 hertz 3D. You might not be able to play anything with it. What do you think about that? Did you check that out?
So that technology. So obviously, I know a lot about displays as well, but I'm not like as knowledgeable on it as I am with other topics. But I do know that this technology is not new. Like they probably have improved it, but it like came out in like 2011 or something, 3D without glasses,
Yeah,
and
there
it
was a
didn't
laptop,
require.
I think. It was a
Mhm.
like LCD laptop, I think, that had that before. I don't know if that was the first one, but I think there was like an MSI laptop that had that 3D without glasses. So, but I'm sorry, what are you gonna say that it's all?
Well, I was saying that it's not a new technology what they're doing. I'm sure they've improved on it maybe since then. Obviously, since they're bringing it back, and it didn't work well last time, but or at least it didn't get market appeal. And I think one of the reason it didn't get market appeal is because the 3D glasses thing. Like, first of all, people were inconvenienced by having to wear glasses, and the second thing was so many people didn't know that you had to get glasses, and a lot of TVs didn't actually come with the glasses included, that you had to buy them separately. And once the TV manufacturers saw that people weren't buying the glasses and people were looking at 3D, you know, vision as a gimmick, they started including the glasses with the display, but then it was too late by then. So I think people weren't interested in 3D displays because they got a really bad reputation. So even though it was an improvement from the traditional 3D displays, it just was inevitably going to fail. So I think it's good to bring it back in the year 2024 and see how the market likes it. And yeah, it should work for any content, but I do think you can master content for it and make it look even better, but it should just work.
Do you think it should work? Like, you just open a game, you can see it on 3D like that?
Well, this one company that was making a 3D TV without the need of glasses, they said it works on any you can turn to any like channel or station on TV and it'll work. So it should work
Oh,
for a
really?
game. If they have something similar to what they were doing. That was like in 2011 or 13 or something.
I mean, if it's like that, I would say that's a must buy. I mean, if I can just get an 8K OLED right now. I mean, 120. I wish it was 240, but yeah, bandwidth, but I think it should be 240. Display 2.1, which can support, I think, 240 hertz, 4K, 10 bits. Full uncompressed. I believe so. I'm not sure though. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it should be 240. But who can get 8K 240 frames per second on any game? But still, you can use DLSS or whatever frame generation. But still, at 120 hertz, if you can just get that OLED, you can play all the games on 3D and watch all the content on 3D without glasses. That's just insane good. I mean, I would just try to do anything I can to buy that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not sure
I
if.
mean, it wouldn't be as good as like native HDR. It's kind of like a hybrid between flat screen displays and VR. So it'd
Hmm,
be like kind of an in between. It wouldn't be quite as immersive,
yeah,
but it
yeah.
would be a lot better than what we have now,
No,
ideally.
but still, I mean, if it just works, it will be
Yeah.
fantastic. So, um, yeah, you're giving this company too much credit. Money can always buy talent. It's one
Yeah.
of the comments. Do you need calibration tools to see black level race? Every intern could see it. You don't need calibrations tool. Yeah, actually, I was able to see black level race before the
We
HDR
make
analysis tool.
I think this is important to note because I didn't actually consider this earlier, but I do think it's important to note now. you obviously know that like select few displays can display true HDR, like some VA panels can, all OLEDs can, of course, and then like mini LEDs, LCDs can. But our games aren't even made on like those types of displays. Like the types of displays we make our games on are not displays that do HDR, like real HDR. So I think that's another thing to consider.
But
Um,
wait, what do you mean? Like what kind? Like you're saying that developers have displays that are not available on the market?
no, I'm saying that the displays that we use to make our games, they're like IPS LCD displays basically. So they can't even display true black. They don't have great contrast. So I think
Yeah,
that's
but
another
the,
thing.
but obviously, you know, the team, the person who is working on HDR, they do have to have like a good, at least like an OLED to work on it.
Yeah, they
I cannot
should.
believe someone working on HDR is working on a crappy LCD screen because how can he know? He needs to at least have a display that's
Yeah.
calibrated.
Yeah, well, I mean, OLED monitors are new to monitor space, and we obviously need smaller displays because there's so many displays there, and we need a lot of desk space. So, and since OLEDs are new, we couldn't get them before. Maybe we'll start getting them. There's obviously burn-in risk because these tools are open on our screen 24/7 in like the same exact spot.
Oh yeah, for sure.
S-
Yeah, yeah. I can
But
definitely see that.
the reason we don't have OLEDs, I mean, maybe some studios do, but it's because we don't have a dedicated, like we do have dedicated teams to different things, but there's not like a team dedicated just to HDR and that's it. There if there was a team dedicated to that, their job would be done in like a day and then they would retire for the year or something. So it's just like people that aren't necessarily, just people that know a little bit about HDR, just trying to add it to the
Mhm.
game as correctly as they know, then it getting
Oh,
messed up
I
later.
get what you're saying. So basically, it seems like there's no need even for an HDR guy. It's something easy. So then someone might be working on it when he's not actually an expert. He might be, you know, the designer or something.
Yeah, what looks good
He
to
might
his
just
eyes.
do it in one day, like just to finish it or just to add the feature to have it. And he might not be an expert or have all the tools or the expertise because it's not even worth it to pay someone to do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the least they could do is just do the same, like just use the HDR analysis tool. I mean, you don't need to have an OLED to use the HDR analysis tool. You don't actually have to check with your eyes that the game looks on a certain way. I open the HDR analysis tool with the lights on, and I see, the black level. You see minimum CLL. You turn off all the hot elements, and you see, okay, that I have zero blacks, and you can also see what is the average brightness depending on the if you are on a bright sunny day or in the darkness or whatever. So you don't actually need like a fantastic monitor just to make sure the HDR makes sense. Just I could just look at the graph depending on the situation and see, oh, that kind of makes sense. But if you open like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you are on a bright sunny day and the average CLL, so the average brightness is like 30 nits. There's something wrong there. It cannot be. 30 nits on a bright sunny day. I mean, that's not even a plasma is gonna do that. So yeah, I don't think there's any justification to get it wrong. At
Yeah,
least not
there's
now that we have the Lilium shaders and all of that.
Yeah, there's no excuse for it, but there are reasons, I suppose. Like whether that reason's acceptable or not, it's obviously I don't think it's acceptable personally, but I'm just saying why it happens.
So Olsin says the problem now with HDR, how we can know that we are in the best HDR with calibration. Not all are expert to use TV and HDR. Some advice to use HDR TV. So that's what I've been trying to do for a lot of videos. I
Mhm.
mean, I get a lot of things wrong. I've been learning and just sharing what I learned on the channel. But even if you have a different display, even if you don't have an LG OLED, you can do most of the stuff that I share with these new Lilium shaders. If you have a PC and if you have a console, what I would recommend you is to learn about your display. What is the maximum brightness of your display? Just go to our teams, like Gaming Tech recommends. Just go to our teams, just see what is the maximum brightness. Just open some white clipping patterns to see what is the clipping point and change that. Maybe go to a game, change the sliders to see if your display or Windows is changing the tone mapping curve depending on the max CLL. Just learn about your display. See with near black test patterns, see if your display is crushing blacks. It doesn't matter if it's an LCD, you might be crushing blacks or not. So just learn about your display and see what is that you need to get the best picture depending on your display. It might take some testing, but you can get it done with just some test patterns. You don't need to have a colorimeter or be an expert or anything like that.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I really wish Microsoft would add correct like clear type to, OLED displays.
Clear
Like
type two.
it's basically like like the OLED display monitors and stuff that you see now. They have like color fringing on like text and
Oh
stuff
yeah, oh yeah.
because of the
I see
different
what you're
subpixel
saying.
layout. Yeah, that's easily fixable, but it's something only Microsoft can fix,
Oh, I
and
see what you're
they just
saying.
don't fix
Yes,
it.
yeah. Hardware on Box team. I think he has talked about uh, that issue. I've never been bothered by that. Um,
Yeah,
I don't.
but if
I do.
Microsoft fixed it, OLEDs would be better for game development because the color fringing. I mean, it might be better on your TV than it is the monitors, of course, but yeah, the color fringing's kind of bad for office work.
Really, what I do see the difference when I use my C1 is if I change from full to limited because I have a black background. So the way I set up Windows is a high contrast theme. So everything is black, so no light to my eyes when I'm just doing, computer stuff. I'm not gaming. And then I have the text in yellow. So that yellow text, if I have limited instead of full, I see that the color saturation is a lot. It looks more washed out. It looks a lot sharper, and I also see that I definitely see that difference on my plasma TV. My plasma TV has a movie mode that has better contrast. Better. It has lower black floor. It has better contrast, but I cannot use full range on that mode. And because of that, it looks significantly blurrier than full range. Yeah, I'm talking about a difference that's like going from 1080p to 1440p. So even I prefer to get a worse contrast, and contrast is the most important attribute for picture quality. But the difference in clarity is so big that I prefer to go with that PC mode that has, worse black floor, but it looks so much sharper in comparison. So yeah, that's what I see. It looks very very sharp on my C1. The text clarity is absolutely perfect in my opinion. Like I don't see any issues that I've seen. Reviewers complaining like the text clarity is not as good as an RGB LCD monitor. I don't see that.
I'm not. Yeah, your TVs might have a different pixel layout than because even phones have different pixel layouts. Like pretty much every OLED display has a different layout. So your OLED might not even have the issue at all. I'm not sure honestly. I'm not an expert on the subject.
Okay. So Couch Potato said you're gonna prepare more questions before live. We didn't prepare anything, man. We just freestyle it like Joe Rogan
I thought,
style.
yeah, I thought the questions and conversations so far have been good.
Yeah. So I mean we've been 153. So let's keep it at 2. Let's try to cover all the questions. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. So Austin says, I know before PC, when Doom 3 and Half-Life 2, image was amazing in monitor and low resolution. CRT was amazing technology. Now have all monitors CRT use and look better. I mean, I wish they were still making CRTs. At this point, the CRTs, the quality of the CRTs at this point would be absolutely insane.
They were getting
Um,
slimmer right before they went out of what's it called? Right before they stopped manufacturing them. Like the CRTs in like the early to mid 2000s were actually getting a little bit small, like slimmer.
Yeah,
So yeah, I would have loved it
there was
too.
a technology called SPD or SD something. I forgot. People have mentioned that to me. Like there was gonna be like a flatter CRT technology that was gonna be even better, and they didn't actually. It never came to fruition or something like that.
Yeah,
I, yeah, it's all follow the money. It was maybe too expensive. Same with plasma TVs. It's a technology that I like a lot. It was too expensive to manufacture. It's just so heavy, full of components. It's too expensive. It's crazy. So Astria says object motion blur is in fact a good thing. Too many developers just use the wrong kind of motion blur. For me, camera motion blur or per pixel motion blur of is so crap.
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I
What they
kind
need
of
to
see.
do,
Okay, go ahead.
what they need to do is games just had a motion blur option they had on and off. They need to do a few things. They need to one separate different kinds of motion blur so you can enable them all individually. And number two, they need to give a strength slider so you can adjust the strength of the motion blur. Because that's a problem. Is some games I feel like they have decent motion blur, but it's just too strong for me. Because sometimes if I'm playing with TA, I like motion blur on to hide it a little bit, then it's just too blurry. It's way too strong for me.
Yeah.
I think that's something they need to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I've tried it sometimes, and I have to say that yeah, I see some things, and sometimes it looks nice. Some effects are it might look. It's not a terrible idea. Um, I'm just kidding. Yeah, of course, having more options is always better. Um, but yeah, I would still turn it off. I want more
Yeah, I
frame,
turn it
but
off.
more blur. Last Assassin's Creed Mirage has native chromatic aberration. Ubisoft, they do update to remove if possible because games hurt my eyes. The same with Far Cry 6. You had to install a mod that was very sophisticated just to remove the chromatic aberration. It was forced. It's
Yeah,
crazy
there's
they
like
do that.
you can remove it from Assassin's Creed with the hex editor tweak that someone put out. So that is something you can do. But yeah, they should add it in the game. I can't do anything about that. I don't work at Ubisoft anymore, obviously. But I hope they do add it as an option for you.
So Carlos is asking that he's getting 119 frames per second instead of 120. Why? I guess that's because of ALLM with VRR. Maybe it's like you don't get the 120 just to not hit the refresh rate for some latency issues or buffering or VRR range, something like that. I'm not sure why that happens,
Yeah.
but I would turn off ALLM to see if that fixes that.
Yeah, because it's a pretty big deal. Because then you're getting one. Because then you're getting one. Because then you're getting one FPS less, which is a major deal. So
Well, no, but but it may be
I
like
know,
a
I'm just joking.
curiosity. And for example, if you
Yeah,
want to use OLED Motion Pro, you want 120.
yeah.
119 is not gonna look perfect. Um,
Can't you set a custom refresh rate though at 119 and then it will look fine? Mm,
I don't know why this TV, if you set up a custom refresh rating, you are not using VRR, it just doesn't work. Like it will not work. Like if you set, let's say, a 90 hertz refresh rate and you turn off VRR, it doesn't work. Like you have the refresh rate on the, but it's like actually 120. Like when you check the TV, it's actually at 120. It's not changing to 90 or any custom.
yeah,
I don't know why monitors they do allow you to change it. Um, and the reason why I wanted that to work is to see if the BFI was working at
yeah.
custom refresh rates, but it doesn't.
I guess because they don't expect it only works on like Windows or like a PC, not a console, and they don't expect you to use it on a PC, I guess. But one thing that sucks about BFI on PC is there are
Mhm.
some displays like that 540 hertz TN panel with ULMB2.
Uh-huh.
The BFI can only be activated at 360 hertz and above, which makes it extremely niche.
Yeah.
Like at that point, like BFI is still useful at that point, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot less important.
Yeah, because the thing is, you need a rock solid 360 frames per second, which is
Yeah.
almost impossible
So
to
I would
get.
never get that monitor because
Yeah,
of that
it
reason.
definitely needs to be supported at multiple refresh rates, especially 60, 70, 75, 80, 85, because depending on the game, you might get 85 frames per second, but not
Yeah.
100 or 120.
I mean, depending on I understand it could be depending on how they're doing it, it could be very flickery or whatever or have a ton of crosstalk at 60 hertz, but they should still be able to work at least like 100 hertz or something. Should be able to bring it down to that.
Yeah, and the Blurbuster chief, I asked him this. He said that the flickering is not linear. Like it's the way we perceive flickering. It's not like at 60 you're gonna get half of the perceived flickering as 120. Like if you increase it proportionally, it's not like that. Like there are some thresholds, and it depends on the person. So for BFI, heaven, you definitely need to be able to fine tune it, because you might find out that at 80 hertz or 83 hertz, you don't see the flickering anymore, and then you're happy with it, like, and then it just looks, um, good enough for you. So it is definitely the best for the technologies to have fine tuning. So you can just set it to anything specifically so you can fine tune it to yourself depending on your perception, because everyone is different. I thought before that this is like, okay, if I don't see flickering, nobody's gonna see flickering, but it's not like that. He
Yeah,
told me
I
that
mean,
it depends on the person.
yeah, like they should definitely enable 60 hertz, even if it does flicker a bit, or there's a lot of crosstalk, just because it's all very subjective. But I was just saying, like, they should be able to do it at like 100 hertz without any problems. And also, the only reason that there's even is a lot of crosstalk on LCDs, crosstalk's not an issue on OLEDs because of the pixel response times, but is because monitors aren't doing QFT, which stands for quick frame transport, which is basically where they use like I haven't read up on it in a while, but it kind of uses like the clock speeds of the higher hertz at the lower hertz, and then it transports the frames faster, so then it reduces crosstalk a lot. So that's something to display manufacturers need to start doing on their LCD displays. I think
Yeah, and
NVIDIA
even
UMB2 does that.
and ULMB 2.0 tried to fix that crosstalk and the clarity on the entire image, but they still have a difference. The thing that I see, like the biggest difference between the clarity of this OLED Motion Pro High on the C1 in comparison with this, you know, backlight strobing technology or ULMB 2.0, whatever, is that, yeah, it is not as good. This OLED is like, based on my testing, it's like 3.2. It looks like 3.2 milliseconds of persistence, but the thing is, it looks the same no matter where you are on the screen. With ULMB
Yeah,
2.0, it is different. Based on the reviews, you see that is if it's on the center of the screen, if it's at the top or at the bottom, it's still different. Even when they try
yeah,
to to fix that, to mitigate that, but the clarity is a lot better. It's just, unfortunately,
yeah.
the black levels are it's just an LCD technology.
And that's a limitation with LCDs more so than it is with ULMB2. I think ULMB2 is probably the best black frame insertion technology we have. 'Cause it has a
Yeah,
4 times amplification, which means at 250 hertz, you have 1,000 hertz of motion clarity.
yeah,
So,
or better. Yeah, so you can, in those 360 hertz monitors, you get it even better. So I want, yeah, I would like to see it actually. If there are some monitors that I would like to review, would be those monitors with ULMB. And but yeah, I would not buy it because just the contrast in comparison, I'm not gonna be
the
very happy
only
with it. And the thing with the clarity and diminishing returns and all of that is that I don't think that you start appreciating that those improvements if we still have the TA, issues and other blur issues and ghosting, and that to go to that super clear motion, you might not be able to tell the difference that much if we have other issues. But if we had like absolutely raw pixels, everything perfect, then you would definitely see it. Um, that's why, that's my take about the blurriness issues.
And the
Uh,
and the biggest issue I have with it is from reading all the ULMB2 displays, the one that goes the lowest goes down to 120 hertz. Now, NVIDIA has showcased ULMB2 working at 60 hertz, so I think this is something the monitor manufacturers are actually choosing themselves to limit it to 120. But yeah, that does suck that there's not a display out there that's goes below 120 strobing with it.
yeah, maybe they don't do it because they don't want to earn a bad reputation, because you know how people are.
Yeah,
They turn it on, it's at 60. Oh, it's a flickers, are bad, so then they might earn a bad reputation because of people that like that.
exactly.
But
That's why
but this
they that's why they enforce the it says like in order to have ULMB2, you have to have at least 250 nits of brightness or better with ULMB2 on. Like that's obviously not a technical limitation of ULMB2. Like it can obviously display at lower nits. Why wouldn't it be able to? It's just something they force on the manufacturer
yeah.
because they don't want a bad reputation. Like, oh, it's too dim. Like 250
So
nits of brightness is bright enough. You
But
know.
actually, I think the Asus monitor, like I've seen some reviews for those monitors. I think they do have like a slider that lets you get even more clarity, but the brightness goes down significantly, and then you don't see the clarity difference, and it just looks dimmer. But I do believe that you would be able to get more clarity in less than 250 nits, but
Yes.
I'm not sure.
But you have to but the problem is when reviewers test that setting, they leave the speed on the UFO test the same, so then the clarity doesn't change because it's already perfect, and they don't know that. You're like, when you decrease
Yes.
it, make the UFO test faster because it's not gonna show a difference otherwise.
Yeah, it really blows my mind how a lot of reviewers, they talk about this. They don't even read the Blurbuster's law, and it's not. I mean, it was very difficult for me to understand it, but as a reviewer, um, they should study it just and I mean, the Blurbuster chief is like the best. I mean, you can ask him anything and he's gonna explain you like in detail everything. He's gonna take the time to make sure you understand it, especially if you are a reviewer. I mean, this is a small YouTube channel, and I just make like 3 4 videos. I didn't understand the Blurbuster's law at all, and he reached out to me and he made sure that I understand it, and he replied to my comments and answered my questions. So if you are like a big YouTube channel and you're talking about this stuff, just hit him up. He's gonna tell you. He's gonna explain you. And it's not, at the end. It wasn't that difficult to understand that, depending on the speed. Yes, it's what you're saying. If you increase that setting, but it's already looking like 1 pixel of motion blur, or even stop that. You're not gonna see the improvement because it already looks uh, perfect. So you have to increase the speed to see the difference, and they 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 don't talk about that. And yeah, it's weird that I rarely see anyone mentioning persistence, or talking about the Blurbuster's law.
Hardware
So
Unboxed started doing it a bit more recently because they've been reviewing esports monitors more recently, which have these modes, and it's kind of made them aware of persistence blur, and now they've been covering it a lot more. So I feel like Hardware Unboxed has had like some sort of awakening because they've been doing a lot of videos on it lately.
yes, I mean, I would like a lot to make a one of these live streams with a team from Hardware Unboxed. That would be awesome.
Oh
And
yeah,
actually, I believe he's the best display reviewer we have. It's my opinion. But
sorry, Steve.
I yeah, it's no, Steve, not like team. Steve doesn't review the monitors like team.
Oh yeah, well,
Yeah,
he
Steve
does
is
the
the
hardware
other.
stuff.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but I've been listening to his videos, and I don't remember him like specifically saying like persistent, like 1 pixel of motion blur, like three saying exactly. He puts the picture, which might be more relevant for most people. So I'm sure he knows it. I mean, I'm 100% convinced he read the Blurbuster's law. I have no doubt about it. But for some reason, he doesn't want to specifically say, okay, this monitor has 1.5 milliseconds of persistence, or 2 milliseconds of persistence equal 2 pixels of motion blur when moving at 1000 pixels per second. And that means exactly this. You can open the Blurbuster's law and move the pattern at this amount of pixels per second, and it's gonna look perfectly clear. Yeah, I've never seen him exactly stating what is the motion clarity of the monitor, and that's really all I want to know, really, like exactly what is the motion clarity. Can you test it? And it might not be very easy because sub 1 millisecond is gonna move maybe too fast on the screen to know for sure, but
Yeah,
yeah.
diminishing returns, basically.
Yeah, for example, I tried to test my CRT, motion clarity, and because the resolution is so low, the UFO test is moving too fast on the screen. I cannot determine if the pupils are sharp at that speed. So I don't know. Yeah, it's less than 1 millisecond of persistence, but I cannot tell you exactly how much it is because it just moves super fast on the screen. Penumbron says 8K plus super sample images on the store page or cover with impressive graphics sell better for casuals than games than higher frame rates and resolutions. Absolutely, they know that. I play some old games on PC on my OLED. Believe me, was amazing by the quality because have real 4K sharp
You know what
image.
my favorite looking game is that's like newish
Oh, go
is
ahead.
unfortunately it's like a VR game. You can get it to work in standard mode if you just want to admire the graphics. But Half-Life Alyx is one of the most beautiful games because it just looks beautiful and modern, but it's also made in forward rendering and it doesn't have like any aliasing and it's like achieves photorealism. So it's a very beautiful game, Half-Life Alyx.
Yeah, actually, I don't wanna even play it. I want to get into VR. I just got this Quest. I
Mhm.
want to learn how to get the best out of it. Figure out all the settings. All the mods, everything I can do with it. And then after I upgrade and get it like the ultimate VR, then I will play Half-Life Alyx because I know
Yeah.
after I play that, there's not gonna be anything else to play that's better, probably.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. So you're saying that it actually looks very, very clear. There's
Yeah.
no ghosting, none of that crap.
There's no ghosting, blur, and that's the thing. People think like sure, like TAA smooths out edges and stuff, and there's obviously not like pixels in real life. But if you can get rid of those pixels without it, like any sort of ugly post processing, it actually achieves even better photorealism. Like when looking at like a fire extinguisher in a Half Life Alyx, it just looks like amazing. Absolutely amazing.
But
And
wait,
obviously,
what is the difference? You mentioned forward rendering. What do you mean by that? Like, what's the difference? Why Half-Life Alyx looks so much better? Like,
well, there's two types of renderers. There's forward rendering and deferred rendering. So they both have their own benefits and flaws. So forward rendering is what older games use, and if a game supports MSAA, they either are forward rendered games or parts of the pipeline are forward rendered. Um, I mean, there's some deferred rendered games with MSAA, but the issue with deferred rendering and aliasing is it introduces more aliasing and subpixel noise, and it also makes MSAA like not work anymore because MSAA and forward rendering it has a cheaper compute cost because it's running as like a like you can basically get MSA working with a fraction of the cost of like super sampling, but in deferred rendering, it costs just as much as super sampling. So MSA kind of becomes pointless without a lot of like workarounds and tweaks from the developer. And then also doesn't hide all the aliasing either because it can't get like a inner surface texture detail aliasing and other types of aliasing that older games didn't have in forward rendering. And the reason we switched to deferred rendering despite all the aliasing issues is because we can have more light sources in a scene. And before, that really limited us, especially with bigger games and complex scenes, because the performance would just be awful with all those light sources. So we had to uh, either take the performance hit or just get worse scenes. So that's why games are deferred rendered, but a lot of VR games can be forward rendered because you know getting rid of
so then,
aliasing is
so
important.
then Half-Life Alyx looks sharp like the old games used to look, but at the same time, it has the new the improved lighting and all the new stuff.
Yeah, because Valve they're very passionate. Like they really put a lot of work in the game, which is why I appreciate it. Like they're using older techniques, like they're using cube maps, for example, but they've innovated on cube maps and they're using like an advanced cube maps that like follow you well, and they're also using baked lighting, so they're getting the quality of like ray traced lighting, but it's baked,
So
and the
when you
source and
look at a
object moves.
reflection, it looks like ray tracing, but it's not ray tracing.
Well, it doesn't look like ray tracing exactly, but it looks better than standard cube maps do. So it's a lot better than most rasterization implementations. They're pushing the technology to its limits. You know,
That's awesome. I cannot wait to play that, but I want to wait. I don't want to just throw
yeah.
it
I
right
mean, you
now.
might be limited. Obviously, the experience might be limited by your own hardware, like what you can run it at, the settings and stuff. But it looks really good if you can turn everything up and play it at a high resolution.
So Dave Da Vinci Codes ask, were you able to ask about Dolby Vision gaming? Why so little support? ESP with Cyberpunk, Lies of P, etc. So I think that HDR10 Plus with driver NVIDIA driver support or something like that, that might be the way forward, because HDR10 Plus is hopefully going to take care of the tone mapping, so your display doesn't have to. So you can basically use HDIG if you have one of these, or basically no tone mapping on the display. The tone mapping is done by the just the source. The source is already going to like be set up so it looks the best on your display. So that would be HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision, and it does that dynamically basically. And then Dolby Vision would be like the dynamic tone mapping done on the display, not on the source. So I think that the best idea is to fix the source. So I believe that HDR10 Plus, if they are going to take care of the tone mapping to make sure the game looks the best on your display, we might see less issues that if the display has to take care of everything, because then the source is a mess. But I don't know. It might be. Of course, they are both perfect if the source is perfect and the TV calibration of the Dolby Vision is perfect, which is another thing. Sometimes the calibration of the Dolby Vision is not good. We see, um, classic tech calibrations saying, hey, the Dolby Vision should look a certain way and it doesn't, so you have to fix it. You have to calibrate it so it looks like HDIG, or similar to it, or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. What's your take on Dolby Vision gaming?
Well, I know that Dolby Vision's not like an open standard and HDR10 is, I'm pretty sure. And that, limits it because I think HDR10 gets close to Dolby Vision in quality, right? Or
It's
are they?
exact. I mean, the difference is you're not gonna get like more like performance with Dolby Vision or anything. So I believe that the difference might be, for example, I was just playing Ratchet and Clank, and I see there is a scene where a large portion of the screen is white, okay, and it's clipping, even with perfect settings, like everything is absolutely fine tuned, and it's clipping. I believe that Dolby Vision can notice, okay, well, this needs to be tone mapped down so it looks perfect on your screen. So then you don't see that clipping, even if the settings are perfect. So that might be the difference, but it should look as bright, because HDR is an absolute. Okay, so what that means is that if you have a display that's perfectly calibrated, they should look exactly the same. So then if you have a more capable display in terms of peak brightness, then the difference is going to be that the highlight is going to pop more, but the overall image should be the same, the details should be the same. But of course, if you have more brightness on the highlights, you're going to get more of an HDR impact. You're going to get that 3D, three-dimensional picture that people talk about. But basically, Dolby Vision it's not like a kind of HDR that suddenly has to look better. You might get more detail because of that. You might be fixing some clipping that might appear, but that's my understanding. Again, I'm not an expert. That's just what I've learned so far all this time with this YouTube
Yeah.
channel.
HDR10 is basically FreeSync and Dolby Vision is G-Sync
Yeah,
in
something like that.
in a way. Yeah.
You would not be able to tell the difference or
Very
something.
same, but G-Sync requires a fee. FreeSync's free. The only reason FreeSync is actually used still is because it's bundled with other NVIDIA features that developers might want. And I think it's the same thing with Dolby Vision. Dolby Vision might come with Dolby Atmos and other stuff, which is why developers pay for the fee. But other than that, I mean, I hope the support comes for sure. But developers like open standards more.
So Da Vinci also asked Unreal Engine titles specifically, or maybe thoughts on Cyberpunk too. What I notice in Cyberpunk is that when I use let's say DLSS performance, I'm getting like 120 frames. I see less of the issues that I would see at 60. So for example, if I increase the graphics on the game and then I get 60 FPS with DLSS performance, that looks significantly worse. And I'm not talking about motion or input lag. I'm just talking about the picture quality. It looks significantly worse than if I lower the graphics and now with DLSS performance, I'm getting like 100 to 120 frames per second. That looks significantly better. It actually looks like if I am using DLSS balance at 60. I'm not sure why is that, if it's just my perception or that game specifically.
It's TAA, like, because DLSS is obviously a form of TAA. It has a temporal component. It accumulates frames. It's higher resolution and higher frame rates both help TAA's quality. So higher resolution, it gives it more information to work with, and it's obviously looking for information. And then a higher frame rate also increases its quality because it's using motion vectors and stuff, and there's less differences between each frame, and they have more recent information to work with. So it will reduce ghosting, and it'll just improve the image quality all around. I would say resolution is more important for TAA's quality than frame rate is, but frame rate does help as well.
So you're saying that maybe if we actually take a screenshot and look at it side by side of those 60, the 120 might look like sharper, like if it's a little bit higher resolution, just because having more frames is gonna let the algorithm figure it out better. No,
TAA is the way TAA works and why it has the same flaws that it does, and it's very similar to persistence blur. Like higher frame rates reduces it. They both are blurring because they're holding on to something for too long, and apparently that's just the modern way we have to do things to get other benefits. But yeah, higher frame rates does help TAA, and if you take a screenshot in the same area, you probably would notice some sort of difference in the quality.
Saul says that if you turn off the rate reconstruction setting in Cyberpunk, you see how much the 3000 series latency increases. Well, I don't know what the difference is because I don't have the 40,000 series. But yeah, you're saying that you see the latency penalty of increasing that. I mean, you get a latency penalty just because your frame rate goes down. That's for sure. So you would need to compare that at the same frame rate to see really. And I mean, the latency differences are very, very difficult to notice unless they are very big. At least on my perception, especially with a controller. The way I play. Why does frame generation have so much input lag? Because it's fake frames, bro. It's not real frames. But that's where asynchronous reprojection, I think, it is the way, because you don't get that input lag. So one of the main reasons why people don't like frame generation, it is not good for competitive games because the input lag is terrible. But if they implement this asynchronous reprojection, then okay, now the input lag is fantastic. Yeah, I think it's gonna get a lot. I believe that asynchronous reprojection is gonna get a very good reputation, because for some reason the internet and most videos and I see it on my videos, if I put input lag in the title, people are more interested on it. For some reason, input lag everywhere. All the channels are talking about input lag is the most important thing, and I don't think it is, because you can barely tell the difference unless it's like a big change, big difference. If you want better input lag, just lower all the settings and you have your GPU like at 70% or something like that. nobody does that anyway.
Yeah, and frame extrapolation also fixes input lag. So you obviously know what asynchronous reprojection is. You know what frame generation is, where it holds the next frame so it can insert a fake frame in the middle, and that process of holding that frame is what caused the input lag. But frame extrapolation, where you just display the next frame after the current frame shown, you don't hold the next one. That also reduces input lag a lot. And that's actually what Intel's working on. Their frame generation is going to have extrapolation, so it'll have better
Can you
latency.
repeat? Can you repeat that again? I lost you on the frame extrapolation. What was that?
So frame extrapolation works differently than the typical generation we have with FSR3 and NVIDIA, because they hold the next frame
Mm-hmm.
until they can make their fake frame that's in the middle, because
Mm-hmm.
they want the data from both. And the reason why they want the data from both is so that they know where the object was and where it is, so they don't get the position wrong or any sort of artifacts. Frame
Mm-hmm.
extrapolation would just go immediately after the last frame without waiting for the next frame, which
So
reduces
it would just
latency.
use the information from the previous one without considering
Yeah,
the.
and that's what Intel's doing with their frame generation.
So improve the input lag.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that has some image quality implications to it, but Intel's made their own custom extrapolation model that's supposed to accurately guess where the next frame would be at. So apparently that's not going to be an issue. And they also are a lot richer than AMD and have more resources, so their quality might be just as good or better and lower latency. So I'm excited for it.
Well, XeSS is already better than FSR.
Yeah.
Jose, nobody asked about your OLED TV. You can enjoy OLED, have live a 2D. Okay. So he says, yeah, talking about the IPS and lower contrast and all that. Okay, so let's leave it there. I think we've been for a very long time already. Yeah, the gaming tech, man. I don't want to say go without saying hi. I didn't even notice that gaming tech was here.
I was.
Thanks for. Yeah, gaming tech, right?
Yeah, I've saw your live stream with him, and I think I watched one of his videos in the past before he was on your channel.
Oh, okay. Okay, so let's see if we can cover some questions to finish. We've been already 2 hours and a half almost. How are you doing? Is this the first time you go that long with a live stream?
I mean, I've live streamed in the past, but it wasn't like a podcast type live stream.
Yeah, I
So
was actually surprised how the time flies when you're doing this. It's almost like addictive, especially when you start reading the comments. It just never ends. Like I could be doing this all the entire day and not noticing it. It's crazy. Um, so yeah, let's see if we have like any highlights here before we
well,
finish.
since I did say that better TEA is the evolution of graphics going forward, I will leave some games that I think have decent TEA in it, and if you guys own those games, you guys can try it out.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so I'll leave it in chat and in the private chat. So, um, the
Yeah,
two
like have
games
like if you can
are
if you can leave it as a comment on the video, I will pin that comment on the video.
yeah. So Horizon Zero Dawn has good TEA because it only accumulates one
Yeah,
pass frame, so that's minimal ghosting and
I
blurring. And
like
then
it a lot.
Fortnite's TSR, Unreal Engine uses TSR, but Fortnite uses custom values for it, and developers don't like to tweak it. And since Epic Games makes Unreal Engine, they know more about TSR than anyone, so they've tweaked it very well for Fortnite. And I literally couldn't see like any motion blur at all when I was testing it on the Epic setting. So pretty effective.
Okay, well you have to try the Naughty Dog games and tell me how messed up that is. I mean, it's so sad because those games are absolutely amazing.
Well, I'm sure that it's easy. I'm sure it's just something that else that they're using. Like God of War, you do have to use a hex edit to disable TA, but then it breaks ambient occlusion. So a lot of people just re-enable it, but they don't know what breaks it. But if you just disable ambient occlusion, then suddenly it's fixed. So maybe you can try like turning down some settings or turning things off, and maybe that'll fix the issue.
Wait, so I'm sorry. Gaming Tech actually give us a super shout. Well, thank you, man. I didn't notice that. We are
That's
partners, so
unfortunate.
don't drop your money here, man.
Hmm.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, Gaming Tech, I appreciate him supporting the channel since the very beginning. I had like 400 subscribers, and he was shouting me out. That's why I saw your video. I'm like, man, I have to give you the shout out because that was a great video, and I hope you keep it rolling, man. That video definitely awake the interest. And now Digital Foundry is talking about it. Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think they're talking about you? You making that video? Like your YouTube channel is small. For a YouTube channel that just, with the subscribers that you have, even for me, like I'm very small YouTube channel. If one video that I make gets almost 200,000 views, like that is definitely something. So you hit it on the nail with that video, and I'm
Yeah,
glad because you're talking about the problem, in my opinion. I mean, this is like the most important thing we have to pay attention to, and nobody talks
mhm.
about it. These games, they are super blurry. They just get praise and praise and praise, and that's why when I see a blurry game, I'm like, no, this sucks. It's very bad.
Well, I think the reason they're well, I don't think the video got put in the recommended themselves and they just watched it and that's why they talked about it. I think it's more the fact that my video got other people talking and they heard other people talking about it and then they're very big advocates of TEA. They've been very critical of people that are critical of TEA.
Yeah.
So they put out so John Lindemann put out a tweet kind of poking fun at people that dislike TEA, but it was
Hmm.
like lighthearted, nothing serious. And then Alex, excuse me, put out a tweet after him, which what was a bit more rude about people that dislike TEA. They're like, "How could you dislike TEA when persistence blur is a thing, and like none of your games are clear anyways?" And someone replied to that tweet and saying you should just talk to them directly instead of making posts like this. So then he deleted the tweet and said, "Fine, I'll do that." And he went to the subreddit and made a comment. He asked people why they dislike TEA, and he said, if you guys actually have good reasons, then maybe there's something to discuss." And then people gave him good reasons. He said he read all the comments, then he laid out what the reasons were, and he said he'll make a video on it. So I think we've helped him see why it's an issue. Like even if he personally likes it, I think maybe we've helped him understand why it's controversial and people don't like it as much as him. And I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I do. Yeah, I do know for sure. If when a lot of people don't like something, there is something clearly wrong about it. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of gamers, and you see it all the time. A new game comes out, you can go online and, oh, blurry. You see a lot of people complaining about it. Oh, the game is blurry. TAA, it sucks. And it's like you said on your video. The idea is not to villainize a technology because
Yeah.
some developers get it wrong. But the danger is that if we make a standard, so all the games are using TAA. So the standard, if it is so easy to get wrong, then we have a problem. That's what you said on your video, and I totally agree. Like if we have a standard that's easy to mess up, we have to kind of change the standard, or make sure we have better practices. Um, because my only concern right now with GTA 6, I know it's just gonna be insane. My only concern is, oh, will it look blurry? Why? Because GTA 5 is the aliasing is terrible. It looks okay in terms of sharpness, but the aliasing is terrible. Then Red Dead Redemption 2 is a blurry mess. Then I'm like, okay, they even don't notice that the problems, or they don't care, or they're targeting the consoles or whatever. I don't know, but that's my only concern, and it shouldn't. It, that's the thing. And so yeah, but I'm glad you basically awake the community with that, because Digital Foundry, they do have the power to move the needle. That's how it is.
Yeah, which is why
So
their comments in the past were so harmful because Like, they kind of, in the past, I would say, they kinda treated the issue like if you have an issue with TA, you're some sort of caveman that hates innovation and graphics, and maybe that's because of ignorance, so I'm willing to forgive them as long as they, acknowledge now that they're coming around. But I will say that's led to a lot of issues because even if you just so much as just slightly criticize TA, like, you don't say anything radical, like, "I prefer no TA no anti-aliasing at all over TA," but you're just someone that's saying it could be better. There's people, like, in the comments, not most people, but there's definitely a lot of people on Reddit and in the comments that are saying things like, "Oh, it's another TA hater. You guys are crazy." Like, that's literally the perception that some people have on people that dislike TA, even though it's a totally reasonable position, you know?
Yeah, and when I voice my opinion, I am never like too serious about it. Okay, I'm like I
Yeah.
like to get emotional. I'm like, oh, it sucks. It's not good. And then what I say is, okay, I would like to see just raw pixels. Let me see that. Okay, give me the option, and then I might still go and use DLSS because the performance is better. But let me see it. It's like what I was telling you. If we can get a picture, increase the pixels where they are more needed or whatever. I want to see how that looks. Just let me see it, and but I might still go with TAA, and that might be the best option at the
Yeah.
end.
Lesser of two evils, basically, but
Yeah.
that's what I wanna reduce because it's like horrible blur or horrible shimmering. There should be a better middle ground, which is why I want to improve TEA instead of get rid of it. So I'm actually of the opinion that not all TEA is bad and that TEA can be decent. Some people are like all TEA is bad, and that's a fine opinion as well. But I just do think that there is a better middle ground to be had, and I've seen it before. There are games that have better middle grounds that also because TEA shines when there's either very high detail or lots of thin geometry, because that's something that like spatial solutions like SMAA and FXA can't cover. But there's games with those types of aliasing and details that have decent TEA and even sometimes decent spatial AA. So it's something that you can do with love and labor. But not everyone's Valve. They don't, you know.
Well, but the thing is, I'm sure nobody, and I mean Alex from Digital Foundry, I'm sure he would not argue that. Of course, 16K resolution, 16,000 frames per second. That's gonna look the best. I mean, no question about it. The thing is, you cannot get that. Okay, so I understand that some compromises need to be made, but nobody. I don't think anyone can argue that just raw pixels. Give me all the pixels possible because I mean these AI algorithms with NVIDIA and all of that. What they do is they try to learn this neural networks or whatever. They try to learn from very high resolution images. That's what you want to achieve. So just give me that. Forget about the technology. But of course, we need the technology because it wouldn't make any sense to render that insane amount of information. We don't have the horsepower. Um, I understand that, but definitely that's where we want to mimic. We want to mimic the beauty of just raw pixels, absolute perfection when it comes to clarity. But we cannot get it. I understand that. What I would
The bad
do,
thing. Oh, sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry, just to finish. What I would do is I'm not against pushing graphics. Okay, that's totally fine, but I would hold that a little bit and focus again. Don't sacrifice the clarity to push more lighting and stuff. If you have to lower the scope of the game and give me a better looking game, because in my opinion, a game looks better if it looks more clear, if it performs better. I prefer that instead of the Matrix Awakening, which looks absolutely horrible in my opinion. Just like horrendously bad. I was never impressed by it. And Digital Foundry, they praised that. Okay, that's okay. That's their opinion. I tested it on my PC and it looks horrible. I've never seen anything. It's just horrendously bad. Like the performance was very, very bad too. So that's where I disagree with them when they praise something like that, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree. We can still be friends. I mean, you might have a different opinion from me. I mean, Gaming Tech, for example, he liked Alan Wake too, and I didn't. That's okay. We can still be friends. It's just a game at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, and the problem with forced anti-aliasing, even if it's not TEA, is that it harms game preservation. So if you look at a game like Halo Infinite, there's no anti-aliasing options, no way to disable TAA. No matter what resolution you're at, even if you super sample aggressively, there's very bad like like the resolution just decreases by like 50% basically in motion. But not literally, but that's how it looks. It's so bad. So in the future, let's say like 16K displays are available, or even if it's not a 16K display, but you have a GPU that's capable of outputting the game at 16K internally, like you wouldn't need that game's anti-aliasing to cover that stuff up. And at that point, the game would look a lot worse. Like it's not going to age well at all because once you have that sort of horsepower to run the games like that, and you have forced anti-aliasing that has its own compromises, it's just going to harm game preservation and image quality in the future. Which is why always providing an off option is very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm into that, and I saw your Halo, those pictures with the grass, and I'm like, man, I
Yeah,
just like, how can they let that pass? It's just the most horrible grass I've ever seen on any game. It's just so bad.
I mean,
Um,
I did a survey. I asked people to rate games on their TEA from a scale of 1 to 5 on a TEA scale, of course. So, and there's like 50, a lot of games in the list, a lot of games. It was by game engine. So, and Halo Infinite was rated as the worst, and Red Dead Redemption 2 was the second worst for TEA in the list.
it's there. I mean, I didn't actually play Halo Infinite. I just opened the multiplayer. I didn't notice that much because the multiplayer is just interior places.
Yeah,
There's not a lot of
it has
grass, I
very
guess.
bad motion issues because it like soon as you move, it's just like 75% of your resolution is gone. So it's like Red Dead Redemption 2 is just blurrier out the gate, but Halo Infinite just has worse motion handling though.
Yeah. That's really terrible. Okay, well, let's just leave it there, man. We've been almost 3 hours, man. I really appreciate you being here, man. Let's do it once again. Once in a while we can get together. Um, I don't know if you wanna in the future, show up or get a camera, or I'm not sure. Maybe you just want to keep it like that. It's not easy. Just put your face out there. Look at me without shaving. It's a mess.
Yeah, I
So, but
was
yeah, as you like, I enjoy speaking with you. Having your expertise here because I'm just someone who opened the game and likes it or not. But you're actually a developer, and I appreciate your insights on the topic. So, do you want to say anything to end before we end?
well, I'll send you a link to a site that I use for image comparison. So if you take like two screenshots, you can upload them side by side and like use a slider to move it back and forth. That helps. That's what I was using in my video. I'll send
Okay.
you a link to that site, so maybe it'll help you
Oh,
with your
cool. So
channel.
I can use it for a video or something.
Yeah, you can upload two pictures or even multiple pictures, and then you can select between them and compare them. It's very useful for me. I used it in my video, and other than that, yeah, I don't mind doing it in the future. Even if you have a third guest on, I know you haven't done this with like three guests, but I mean, I don't
Yeah,
mind
we
that.
can have multiple guests. We can do one with gaming tech. And see what is
Yeah,
his take. What is the games that he likes or dislikes with when it comes to the. By the way, before we finish, any take? What's your take on Alan Wake, man? Tell me. I mean, if I'm wrong, you just let me know.
well, the thing I'll say about Alan Wake is that ray tracing and all that stuff, software ray tracing, hardware ray tracing, it's very good, very beautiful, looks good. The issue is that as it becomes more of a standard and the default mode for a game, rasterization is going to look worse and worse because it doesn't get as much love. So one issue with Alan Wake with performance is that if you want more performance and you have to like enable like a rasterization fallback for like SSR or something, it always looks worse than older games because they just didn't put a lot of love and time into it. So ray tracing is great, but during this intermediate phase where it's very expensive, so we still need a rasterization fallback for most people, it does suck kinda because most people will have to experience the game that way, and the graphics will actually be worse than if they just focused on that because they're not putting extra time into it. They're just dividing they're not getting extra time to develop the game. They'd have to develop two modes in the same amount of time. Um, So that's one reason people can think the graphics look pretty bad. But yeah, it is a pretty soft looking game. I agree, and I'm not a fan of chromatic aberration. So
And film grain. I mean, the thing that was the ugliest for me, and honestly, I didn't play the game, so take my opinion. I
yeah,
just
so it's not a
open it.
gameplay analysis, just like image quality and stuff.
Yeah, the thing that really like blow my mind was how much color banding just on the first scene of the game. The color banding was so horrendously bad. Actually, I saw the benefit of using film grain just to hide it a little bit, but it was still terrible.
Yeah,
Like, so, I mean, one of the ugliest color bandings I've ever seen. So you have a horror game that you just open, is a dark night in the forest. There's no perfect blacks. You have a green color filter, a terrible color banding. It's like, how is this game getting so much praise by it looking fantastic? This looks horrible.
yeah,
And you can tell me that later on the game it looks good, but at the beginning it was looking horrendously bad. So
yeah,
that's the thing. And then the performance is just absolutely atrocious. So much ghosting, and like, I couldn't just understand how it was getting so much praise. But yeah, that's
yeah.
my
I
thing.
know, I know why people praise it. It's because people are very malleable and subject to influences. So and obviously the graphics are subjective, and I do genuinely think the game has great lighting. It's like sure they have issues with softness, and then also like the post processing effects, the bad black levels, and color banding. Like there's a ton of image quality issues. Don't get me wrong, and a bad raster fallback. But what it does well, it does very well. So if you prefer those things, I could see why you could praise the game. But the reason why it's getting praise is because Digital Foundry praised it and called it one of the best looking games ever. And obviously that will have some influences on people's own opinions, and they'll say that. Like people were saying the game was unoptimized before Digital Foundry made their video, and now the consensus is that it is optimized. I'm not saying any of those opinions are wrong, but I'm just saying people change their opinion based on what they authority figures say on the matter. And yeah,
Yes,
it's all very subjective. There's no objectivity to graphics.
100% agree, man. Well, thank you very much, man, for being here. Definitely let's do it again. Let's maybe do it together with Gaming Tech. I think it was a great live stream, almost 3 hours. I appreciate everyone that showed up. I think at some point we have like 50 people on the chat, which is like is very very good. Considering I haven't uploaded a video like almost a week for the first time. I was
Yeah.
very long break. So, but I'll keep it up. I'll keep it up with the videos. Now in 2024, we're gonna go strong. We're gonna get into VR, and yeah, well, thank you, man, for being here. I would definitely, support your channel if you want to do a live stream on your channel or anything. I will support you, and I encourage you to just keep doing it, and like hammer on it because nobody's talking about this thing. Hammer on it and try to.
Yeah.
Sometimes this is my advice from what I've from doing YouTube for the time I've been doing it. Sometimes we release a video and we think, oh, I already covered that, so I don't have to talk about that again. But you have to talk about it again a different way with a different game with a different context to reach more people, because maybe
Mhm.
someone was not looking for the title or some or the algorithm, but basically you have one message to share that is very important, that's definitely going to help the industry move in the right direction. You have to repackage that message as many times as you can, and just hammer on it, man. Hammer on it, because this is what we need. So yeah, thank you very much, man, for being here. Thanks for everyone who showed up. You guys
Mhm.
have a great day.
Yep. More
You want
videos
to say
coming on
bye?
TAA. Yep. And I am taking your advice to heart. I do have more videos coming. That video I was talking about on Skyrim, I was going to use like 8K texture mods and like lower textures with different anti-aliasing settings. And yeah, so expect it as my next video whenever that may come, especially if the results are interesting. And thank you all for tuning in and
Yeah,
watching me.
absolutely. His YouTube channel is in the description of the video. It's Hybrid YouTube channel. I'm gonna post a link to his latest video too when we finish the live stream.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, take care, man. You guys have a great day, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.
Yeah. whenever that is.